I'm going to help you make your first $100,000 in medical device sales. We made this course because I use these exact same strategies to hit quota at Medtronic, where I performed at over 130%, and then was headhunted, worked for a medtech startup, and grew that territory from $0 to over $800,000 in 18 months. We've also taught these strategies to the members we work with, where we've got them placed on average over $100,000. This course is for someone who wants to get into medical device sales, but also perform, especially in your first year. It's good to not only teach you what to do once you first get started, but also how to run breakfast, lunch, how to actually meet with surgeons, how to sell, and how to have yourself stand out so you can actually go hit quota. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to first year in. You did it. You broke into medical device sales. You put in all that hard work. You went through the grueling interview process and you rode the roller coaster. And now you're in the industry that you worked so hard to get into. So first off, I just want to say congratulations to you. I'm really proud of you because not everybody can do this. But now I want you to take a little bit of a rest to breathe because the hard work is just starting. I always tell people the hardest thing I ever did was break into medical device sales. And then I did medical device sales. You're going to be putting that same work and that same effort to now learn how to become a great medical device sales rep, and either go from an associate to a full line rep as fast as possible, or go from a full line rep with a territory that maybe you don't know what you're doing. And we're going to make you one of the top reps in your company because we're going to show you step by step on what you should be doing, what you should be tracking, how you're going to separate yourself. And I just want to tell you again, I'm so proud of you for breaking in, and I'm so excited that you're a part of this community because I know you're going to get the results that you desire, and we're going to help you take your career to the next level. So like I said, you broke in, the hard work is now just going to start. But what you have to start deciding is, what are your goals? What do you want out of this? Because the reason I'm saying that, each person is going to be in a different spot. Like I said, we're going to have people who just broke in and this is their first day on the job. There's going to be people taking this course that are 6 months into their job. There's going to be people that are full line reps that have been in for a year, but they're just trying to take that territory to the next level. And so the reason I'm saying this is you got to figure out, what goals do you have? What is your goal? Is your goal to be from an associate to a full line rep within a year? You can do that. Is your goal to take the lowest performing territory in the nation to top 10 in a year? You can do that too. And I'm living proof by it. And I want you guys to know, I don't just say this to make it sound good. I don't say this because, oh, it's what I think. I say this because I've done it. I've helped people do the exact same thing. And I know with you being in this course, you can do the exact same thing. But what you have to get crystal clear about is your goals. You have to get crystal clear on what you want your life to become. So the reason I'm saying that is when I became a full line rep, I knew my goal was to hit quota. And so I came into Medtronic and I was like, what do I do now? But I knew that I had a quota and I knew I wanted to hit that quota. So what I did was, when I had my goal, I could break it down and work backwards to now be able to accomplish that goal. That's why I'm telling you, you need to figure out what your goal was and goals are. So for me, my goal was to hit quota and to exceed quota. So then I found out what my quota was. I worked backwards to find out how much money I needed to make per month, how much money I needed to make per week, and how much money I needed to make per day. And when I'm saying money, also think that's how many cases I needed to do. Because again, we're going to be working with a bunch of different divisions, but let's just say it's the OR and you got to do so many cases, because each case is, for me, like at the time, my average case was about $1,000. So if I have a quota and my quota was $700,000, all right, so then you get your disposable, okay, bam. And then I had my capital quota. That's what I have to hit in this bucket. I had to get those buckets and work them backwards to know what I needed to do and what I needed to do each month, each week, and each day. And just understand, this is sales. One day you'll hit it, one day you won't. You might not hit it for 3 days, and then the next day you hit 6x, right? But you need to have an idea where you're going, because too many people in this industry and just in life just are like, I'm going to figure it out. And my best thing I can say is, I've said it on the podcast a million times, is it's like you're in a rowboat and they go into the ocean in a rowboat. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get crashed by the waves. You're going to get pushed around, and eventually you're going to just die, because there's some pretty dang big waves. But if you know that shore is 100 miles that way, you're going to start rowing and you're going to start going that way. And guess what? There are going to be storms. They are going to knock you back. They are going to push you out, and there's going to be things that you did not expect. But if you at least know where you're going, you can at least keep rowing that place. and to that place. And so I just want you guys to know that you need to have that goal because that's going to change your whole career. And a lot of people will tell me, I have goals, but they've never actually worked those goals back. You've never actually taken the time to say, this is my goal. How do I get there? And this is where I tell you guys, not just in medical device sales, just in your life. What goal do you want? How much money do you want to make? Where do you want to be in your career? You need to start asking those questions and then working them backwards. So for you right now, wherever you're at in your spot in medical device sales, what is your goal? Is your goal to become the best associate, rookie of the year? Is it to become full line rep? Is it to become, a president club winner? Is it to become taking a low performing territory to a top performing territory? You need to make that goal crystal clear and have one or two really main goals, because then you can focus on it and then we can get stuff done. Because the last thing I'll say on this part is, if you're always just guessing which goal, if you have 18 different goals, you're spread too thin. You can't be effective. You need to have one or two big goals that are going to change your territory or your life and your career. You need to focus on that, and then we can put all of our energy and get that accomplished. All right, so I just talked about setting goals, and you got to go after them and working backwards, right? But I wanted to make this section to make realistic goals, right? And the reason I'm saying that is I love that you guys are just hungry. I love that you guys are going to get after it. But the one thing I hear all the time when people reach out to me is they're like, I'm going to make $100,000 worth of sales in the first 3 months. And I'm like, you don't even know the doctor's name. You don't know the hospital's name. You don't even know what you sell, right? And that's what I just want you guys to know is realistic goals. What is possible? And again, I sit here and tell you guys all the time, believe in yourself, go get it. But the reason I'm saying that is if you guys are in the industry, just understand the first 6 months is you just understanding your job, your company, the products that you're selling, the accounts that you might already have, and then just going and talking to those accounts, finding out who's the OR nurse, who's the charge nurse, who's the scrub techs, who's the surgeons you're working with, getting to know them, who's the surgeries schedulers for your doctors. You just need to find these people out. And then again, you should be working tirelessly until you are an expert at your stuff. Because I say this all the time. When I first broke in, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I could study my butt off to be at least an expert and a resource in that OR room, because there is nothing worse than when you are in an OR room during a surgery with a patient on the table and the doctor asks you a question and you don't know. And then he asks you another question, or she asks you another question, and you don't know, and you don't know, and you don't know, and you see where that goes. Because eventually they'll say, why are you in my OR room? You're not a resource. Get out. Right, you guys? This is why I just get so serious with you is you have to be a resource to your surgeons. You have to be a resource to the OR room. You have to be a resource to the accounts you're in. And that's what you need to figure out is, how am I going to make the biggest difference and how am I going to be a resource? It's by setting those realistic goals of like, hey, I'm just going to become an expert in what I'm selling. I'm going to be an expert with my company. And how do you do that? Let's get into it on setting that realistic goals of being able to go and talk to other reps, being able to just learn from other people, or just calling other reps, networking, right? So I just wanted to go into a quick little piece of setting realistic goals. Again, if you're sitting here telling me I want to take the lowest performing territory in the nation to top 10, I'm here to tell you you can, because I've done it. But what I'm also going to say is it's not going to happen in 3 months. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to take time. And so the first 3 months, you guys, I want you just to get comfortable in the new position you're in, but you're just trying to learn as much as you can. But this course is going to help you go from that 3 to 6 month to really the 6 to 12 month stride is going to just take you to a whole nother level. And I can't wait for it. But just remember, we're going to set realistic goals. So whether you're the associate, hey, you want to become a full line rep in a year? Great. That's awesome. Understand, it's a year. It's not tomorrow. But what can you do every single day to move towards that goal? And that's my challenge for you guys. Whatever goal you set, you just need to do something every single day inside your territory to put you towards that. So again, that's the person who's an associate trying to go to be a full line rep. What if you're already been in for 6 months or a year and you're trying to do it? It would be the exact same thing. What can you do better? And that's what this course is going to help you to get that full line rep role. But the next thing is, what if you already are a rep? And you're like, I've either brand new or I've been in for a year. I just don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out. That's where you have to set the realistic goals of, okay, if you're brand new, it's the exact same conversation. Just learn your products, learn your accounts. But if you've been in for a year, it's, hey, reflect on what you've done. Actually write it down and you might have to make some major changes. And I'm just going to tell you, you will have to make some major changes because otherwise it would have already worked, right? So that's the thing is I just want you guys to set realistic goals. And again, I love the big goals. I want you guys to have them, but just set realistic goals in the first 3 months. Because again, a lot of times when you're getting into this, you just don't know what you don't know. And so you're drinking from a fire hose that we've said 1,000 times, and we just need to learn it. And so this process will help you. But again, I want you to set big goals. We are going to help you reach those goals that you set. But I had to make a little portion of setting realistic goals because the amount of people that reach out to me and tell me that they're going to be a rookie of the year and they're going to crush it and they're going to make $300,000 their first year as an associate, which isn't possible, but they're going to do that. I can't even count on my hands, and that they're going to just crush it. They're going to make sales in the first. I've seen the business plans they write up and they're like, I'm going to make $150,000 in sales in the first 3 months. You've never been in a case in 3 months. You are going to training in 3 months and you're just trying to learn the job. So set those realistic goals. But again, I'm here to tell you, we'll help you hit those big goals. What to expect. You made it to the big leagues. That's what you've heard a million times. Medical device sales isn't like all the other ones. It's not like the other industries of sales. This is the MLB. This is the pros. This is the major leagues. What are you supposed to do now? All right. And so this section is for the person who is going to be an associate or a first year rep just getting in and you don't know what you're doing. This is your first time in medical device sales. And I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of advice, a little bit of things I wish I would have known, and just be able to talk to you guys about this real quick. So number one, when people tell me all the time, oh, this is the big leagues, welcome to it. You guys, it is the big leagues, but it's just another sales job. Now, don't get me wrong. We're selling equipment that changes lives. We are working with some of the smartest people in the world. We have a very stressful job when there's the patient on the table. So don't get me wrong, I do understand that. But in the same respect, I want you guys to take a little bit of stress off yourself because sales is sales. And you'll hear that a million times, but the reason I'm just telling you guys that is I hear so many people be like, oh, I'm in medical device sales. I think I'm better than someone else. That's how they talk, right? And they don't say I think they're better, but you've talked to those people that they just have a chip on their shoulder and they think they're so much better than the human being that they're sitting across. And I'm here to tell you, first off, no one's ever better than anybody else as a human. Maybe in sales, yes, we are, but not as a human. And that's what just gets me so passionate is I want you guys to know that yes, you made medical device sales. Yes, it's the big leagues. Yes, you have the opportunity to change other people's lives, financially crush it and change your life. But at the end of the day, don't put too much stress on yourself. Sales is sales. And so I just wanted to start with that because I think that's going to take a little pressure off yourself because it is a lot when you first come in. But I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about what to expect when you get in. And so right now I have my computer in front of me today because I have a lot of notes that I want to make sure that we get everybody the best stuff. And so number one we're going to talk about is the credentialing. If you've never been in medical device sales, you do not understand that you need to go get credentialed. And what is credentialing? Credentialing is a lot of times hospitals are going to make you go through a credentialing company to even have access to walk into the hospital, to even be in the OR. And what that requires is you got to go get all your vaccinations that you've ever had in your life. You might have to go get new vaccinations because they're going to tell you what you need to even have access into their hospital. You're going to have to go through if you've had certain things happen to you. And so it's just going through, usually it's going to be more of the health portion of it, but they will also sometimes, I remember I had to go through where I've lived, background checks. They're going to go through all of that. But when you're doing credentialing, you're submitting a lot of stuff and you have to get a lot of files and you have to go get vaccinations a lot of times that you might need just to be in the OR or wherever you're working. And so I just always wanted to state that because I wish I would have known that. That was the stressful point when I didn't know. And I talked to so many associates that break in and they're like, I've been credentialing. I don't know what's going on. And so I wanted to tell you guys, so if you are just first breaking in, that is something you're going to have to do. And everyone always asks me, what can I be doing while I'm waiting on the job? What I did was I went and got all my credentialing knocked out. I got all my background checks knocked out. And I was just trying to get myself as prepared so day one I could start. Because there are some people who don't go ahead and they are taking time. And now when they could be actually working and getting experience, they're going to get their background check. They're going to get credentialed. So that's number one about credentialing. Number two about credentialing is there's also going to be a bunch of different ones. For example, when I was a rep, I had to work with Simplar and GHX. Those are the two common ones I had to. Now, wherever you are listening to this, there's going to most likely be a different one for you. It's going to be certain credentialing companies are with certain hospitals and usually in certain regions. And so what happens is then you go upload it, and then it goes, and then when you get in, you become a rep, you walk in and there's a log rep in or a credentialing area. You're going to go put in your username, your password. It usually will tell you, hey, who I'm going to go see today, what's my surgery, with what surgeon, at what time. And then you get a little badge, and with that badge is what gives you access. So that's going really into the whole credentialing portion, because I wanted to make sure you guys know about that, because each business with credentialing is different and they expect different things, and they have different vaccinations that you need. And then each hospital has different ones. So I used to go into ones and they would be like, you're not allowed, you're not credentialed by this system. But I was credentialed in 100 other hospitals because they had the other system. And you won't even be able to get into the OR. You won't even be able to get past the front if you aren't credentialed. So just making sure that you guys go and get your vaccinations and that you're going to be getting that done. What is training going to be like? You got hired. Do you just go into surgery right now? Are you going into the OR? Are they expecting you to know everything day one? No, they don't. And this is a common answer I always give to people is they don't expect you to know anything because you just got hired, especially if you're an associate. Now, if you're coming in as a full line rep, that's a different question and that's a different answer to you. But if you are coming in as an associate, no, they don't expect you to know everything. And even if you're a brand new rep or you're a full line rep, they don't expect you to know everything. We're taking a quick break to make sure that you are taking notes and actually utilizing the information that you're receiving. The people that we watch have the most success actually come in, watch this course, learn a lesson, and then go utilize on that lesson while taking notes so they can go and revisit. When you're gonna have a hard time throughout this process is if you're scrolling on your phone, you're in other tabs, you're not taking this very serious, and then you're just hoping that it works out. And then you just take 20% of what you heard and then try to make it the whole system. So make sure that we're taking notes, that you're excited, that you're listening, you're tuned in, and let's go get you hired in medical device sales. They're probably got you hired because of your past experience, or you're coming in from another industry. They don't expect you to know everything. And so the thing I'm going to tell you guys to make you just feel a little bit better, you're going to go to training. Most companies are going to send you to a training. It's usually going to be 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the company. They are going to make you go through classes. You're going to have tests, and it's going to be very rigorous because they want you to know it. And I'm just making this really clear so you guys understand it. You have to know it because it's the only way you can go sell. You're going to be learning about your company. You're going to be learning about your products, why your products are the best. If do you have pre-gen and new gen, like do you have old stuff that was coming in, and then do you have brand new ones that are coming in or coming out that you're currently using, or do you have future products that are coming out? And they're going to be telling you about this all at training. But also, this is where they're going to do competitor analysis. So you're going to be going against every competitor that you have, and they're going to break down, this is what they sell against us. This is how they're different. This is the price point that's different. And they're really going to just give you the big overview of what to equip you with to be successful. So the reason I'm telling you that is because I hear a lot of people get really stressed and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to get myself into. Does the company train me? And I always smile and I say, how does the company make money? It's by you selling. So as you can imagine, that company is going to make sure that you're very good at what you do, because if you're good at what you do, you're going to make money, which makes them money. And so again, when you're going into training, now the one portion I need to talk about, which I know we'll have a lot of people in the course that are from this, is distributorships. That's not your Medtronics, your J&J. It's a whole different company. It's me having my own company, and I decided to hire somebody, right? And distributorships are a great resource, a great business, but the training is going to vary. And so the reason I wanted to state that is there are some distributorships that I've personally got people placed with that, for example, they were a Stryker distributorship. So they actually sent their associates to the Stryker training. They paid $5,000, $10,000 out of pocket to take that person and have them go through that training. And then they got all coached through their trainers, and that training program, they came back out to the field. I've seen that happen. What normally I see in a distributorship, though, is it's going to be, hey, you're going to come with this rep. You're going to shadow me for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then you're going to just get to know it. And we're going to put you through our own training program that they made. And so that's what I want you guys to understand. Each company, each distributorship, each place that you go is going to be very different on how they do training. Some will do it a week. Some will do it 3 weeks. Some will let you pass with an 80%. I know some companies that if you don't get a 95 or above, you're fired. So it's just depending on where you're at, and you guys will learn that very soon if you haven't already learned that. But the comment I just want you guys to know, each place is going to be different. but a place should be training you. That's the last thing I'll say about a distributorship. If you are with a distributorship that hired you and said, good luck, run. Start looking for a new position. Because I'll tell you why real quick, and it's why distributorships sometimes can get a bad rap is because, like I said, it's me who's hiring you. I just made my own company, and I just decided, hey, I want to hire you, and I want you to be a part of my team. Well, I'm going to be paying you what I want to pay you, but also I'm going to run it how I want to. And as we've talked about, there's some reps that are really great, and there's some reps that just aren't. There's some distributors that are awesome. There's some distributors that aren't, right? And so if they're not investing into you, if they're not asking, hey, can we get you trained this way? Can you keep learning to set you up for success? Then it's not going to be a good fit, because I can sit here and tell you the amount of people that have been in part of distributorships. They didn't go through the course. They went through their own stuff. They got hired. They're all excited. Somebody told them they'd make 60, 100 grand, whatever it is. And then they find out they're actually making no money and they're only getting paid off commission. And then they didn't get training. They don't even know the hip, the knee, the shoulder, but their distributors just like go at it, right? So I just want to make that really clear to people. You need to have a good training program. And you need to know what you're selling. If you're not, you need to be going to your distributor or your company and saying, I need this. I need you to help me. Because if they make you successful, you'll make the company successful. And I just wanted to really quick touch on that point. Let's talk about lifestyle. An awesome conversation to have. And the reason I'm saying that and why it's awesome is because so many times I get asked, Jacob, am I going to work 30 hours, 50 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours? How much money am I going to make? And this is where I can just sit here and tell you guys, it's the lifestyle is going to depend on what division you go into, but also the territory you're running at. So let me make this a little more clear and give you guys a story from my past. So when I first broke in, I had the lowest performing territory in the nation. And I knew that I was going to have to work my butt off to make it climb. And so those first 6 months, I can easily tell you guys I was working 70 plus hours a week. And why I say that is I was waking up at 4 a.m. I'd go to the gym by 4:30. I would work till get done at 6. And then from 6 a.m. till about 6 p.m., I would go. I'd be doing all medical device sales for my company. And then I would come home, eat some food. And then from 7 till about 8:30 or 9, I'd be studying my products. I've been studying, again, trying to become that expert that I was telling you guys to become. And I did that for the first 6 months. And that was, if you guys go back and see my old reflections, that was the hardest part because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I was working a lot. And I had to make a lot of sacrifices in those first 6 months. But then I can sit here and tell you, this is how sales works is the work you put in is going to be shown, right? So those 6 months of hard work's then shown in my quota and showed in the sales that I had producing the next 6 months. And the reason I'm telling you guys that is no matter what job you're doing, I don't care if they tell you you're going to work 30 hours a week or if you're going to work 100 hours a week, you need to know that you are going to work these first 6 to 12 months because you got to think about this. And this is what everyone does. And I want you guys to get the right mindset right now. Everybody thinks the first 3 months, 6 months is so short term. What you are doing right now is the rest of your career. What you're doing right now is going to affect your life for the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Right? And one of my mentors used to have, he has a t-shirt and it says, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't worry about it for 5 seconds, right? Not talking about the stress. But for this is where the whole conversation comes in. It is going to matter for you in 5 years. Because if you're in here and you think you're going to make all your money and be out in the next 3 to 5 years, I can tell you that's probably most likely not going to happen. It's going to take 5 to 10 years. But I can sit here and tell you guys, if you do the right things right now, in 10 years, your life could be totally different. You might not have to be in medical device sales if you didn't want to be. Right? And there's so much power to have the choice. Instead, you will see reps. You will work with people who've made $150, $200, $300,000, and they've kept that lifestyle the whole time. And now they have to do this lifestyle, and they're 10, 15 years in. And so there's a real big difference from a choice to you have to do it. So again, you guys, the reason I'm just saying that, get the mindset right now. The first 3, 6, 9, and 12 months, you're going to crush it. You're going to put all the work in. Because I can sit here and tell you, the first 3 to 6 months, I put in the most work I ever have. Then the 9 months, I started having the success, so I didn't have to put in as much. I didn't have to do all the stuff I was doing from the beginning. And I could actually just start running my accounts. I didn't have to go do all the in-services. I didn't have to do all the studying about my products because I now knew my products at the time, right? And so this is where it's just saying the first 3 to 6 months, you need to be putting in the work, putting in the hours. But after that, yes, your life can get better. And then this is what's going to take us into what division you're going to go into. So like I can sit here and tell you guys, if I would have stayed with my company, I could have worked 30, 40 hours, maybe even less. and made $150,000+, had a car, lived a very nice life. I'm sitting here telling you, yes, that could have happened for me. But that to me wasn't good enough. First off, you guys know me and you guys aren't like this. That's why you're in this course. You're not here just to be average. The average person makes 177 grand. I'm not just trying to do that. I made north of 200 my first year. That's the average, right? 5 to 20 years it takes to make that. We're not trying to be average. You're not trying to be average. And so for me, I was like, first off, I'm not just trying to like sit and just hang out. But number two, with that comment was I was looking to do more and progress my career much faster. So that's how I went from a rep, a personal trainer with no experience, to a full line rep, to absolutely crushing it at Medtronic, to becoming a regional sales manager, which usually takes 5 to 7 to 10 years to get. And I had under 2 years experience when I got that job because I had a plan when we talk about the goals. But again, going back to that lifestyle, you need to start looking at what divisions, and this is where the networking and talking to people is going to matter because again, this is really going out to my associates that are first in, that are like, I want to be a full line rep in the next 12 months or under. But even to my reps that are now in, and maybe this is your first job or you've been in for 6 to 12 months, you guys need to also understand there are much other divisions than the one you're currently in. And so why I can sit here and tell you guys, there are current industries and current companies in this industry that you can work under 35 hours a week and make over $300,000. And I'm sitting here telling you, everybody you tell that to will say, that's fake. He's totally wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But I can sit here with a smile and say, I personally know those individuals. I've talked to them. I'm friends with them. And so I'm sitting here telling you guys, there is possible to make a lot of money. It is possible to make a lot of money and not have to work 100,000 hours. But going back into the lifestyle, if you think you're going to only work 30, 35 hours all the time, don't do this career because that's just not real life. There are some hours I put in, even now, I put in 80 to 100 hours. I work every single day. And then there are other weeks, I get to have a day off. I get to have a little less. And here's a real life example. As I'm currently making this, for the last 3.5 weeks, I've been home 6 days. I was at trade shows. I was at conferences. I've been doing meetings. I've been working nonstop. So when I came home on Sunday morning at 1 a.m. and I got home, guess what? Monday and Tuesday were pretty low level days for me. I still worked, but I didn't work a 10-hour day that day because I needed some R&R. I actually just needed to do laundry. I had needed to get back to my real life, right? I had to get back to messages, people. So that's where I'm just telling you guys, your life is going to change, but the lifestyle is going to be based off the division. So let's talk real quick about the divisions that have a different lifestyle. Number one, if you are currently watching this, trauma, cardiac, those kind of worlds, yes, you could be working a lot of long hours. You could be working this a lot every single day. You're on call. But with that, usually the money is going to be a little better than if you're not doing that, right? And so I just want you guys to know, again, this is for everybody because this could be a career that you eventually pivot into or pivot out of. But just because you're in it right now doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. And that's something that needs to be said. What you're doing 2 years from now, you don't even have to do. And the reason I'm going to say this is you had a plan and then COVID happened. Everybody had a plan and then COVID happened. And we all had a pivot, right? Just like right now. I know what you think, the job you have, you're going to be there for 15 to 20 years and you're going to crush it. And let me just sit here and tell you, I hope you do. But most likely, who you are right now and you in 10 years is totally different. You might have a different life. You might have an actual family. Things are going to change in your life, and there's different seasons, which are going to take on different roles, different jobs, different companies. And so that's where I'm just sitting here telling you guys, the lifestyle is going to be based, but just understanding, most people that I know that are in trauma and cardiac, especially the cardiacs that are on call, they're usually younger people. And when I say younger, I usually mean under 35, 40. I have met the people that are, of course, you're going to meet the people that are 40 and 50, but the reason I'm saying that is they usually will have reps underneath them, or you got to ask about the family life. You know, everyone's different. There are some people who want to be home with their kids and they want to be with their family and they want to be able to take those trips. And there's other people who they didn't grow up like that. And they're like, yeah, I have a wife, but I see her whenever I see her. You know what I mean? Or a husband, right? Same thing. It doesn't matter. So it just matters what you're wanting your life to look like. But just knowing that, yes, normally trauma and those cardiac cases, you're known for working 60, 80 plus hours every week. But I also know reps that do that and make 300-400K, right? So it's going to differ compared to, like, for example, when I was in the GYN division, I can sit here and tell you guys, my first contract I signed was at plan $135,000. So That's not 2, 3, 400 grand. But with commission, I was able to do that. But again, I can sit here and tell you my lifestyle was normally not many times. Every once in a while, I'd have a case start at 6 a.m. or 6:30, but normally my cases would start around 7 a.m. or 7:30, and normally my cases would be done by 4 or 5 p.m. So I had a normal work day. But again, I was in ORs at 10 p.m. at night. So it's going to differ, but just know ENT, GYN, urology, there's all these different divisions that I could name to you that are going to have different work-life balances. But what I'm sitting here telling you guys, number one, that's for you to do the homework at. But don't come in and just think that you're going to be working 30 hours a week. It's not realistic right away. I'm not saying you can't get there, but you're going to have to put in the work. And then you need to go, while you're doing the work, be talking to everybody, talk to other reps, talk to other companies, and you'll learn. I can sit here and tell you, when I was at Medtronic, and I did very well when I was top 10, right? Commission did very nicely for me. But when my contract was 135 at plan, I remember being at a conference. I talked to somebody, and remember, at my time, I was in the OR, doing all the cases, traveling everywhere, had no help, and I'm working on and doing lunches. I'm doing the cases. I'm doing in-services, every single thing I was doing. And I was at a conference, and I talked to a guy who was part of a company that they were just doing testing for OBGYN. And they started their reps at plan 225. Way more than I was making at the time. And guess what? They just had to go do lunches, talk to them, see what test they were using, have them use another test, and go. That was a different world, right? So it's why I can sit here and tell you, that person isn't in the OR in the early mornings. They're not in. And guess what? If they're just selling to an office, that person's not going in before 9 a.m. because nobody wants to see them at the office, and they're trying to get lunches scheduled. And then someone at the office doesn't want to see them after 2, 3 p.m., right? So your days are going to look different. That's why I'm sitting here telling you guys, each division's different. There's a lot of different lifestyles. And why I can say this is you just need to figure out what lifestyle you want to have, how much money you want to make, and then go talk to people and figure that out for yourself. That's the biggest thing, is you got to actually do the work and ask. So no matter if you're watching this as an associate or if you're watching this as a full-line rep, just know you can always pivot if you need to. But I'm hoping that you're watching this and you're like, I'm in the division that allows me to live the life I want, make the amount of money I want, and the happiness is beyond what I can explain. That's my goal for you. I wanted to make this video real quick to talk about the different people you're going to be working with in the OR. And we're going to go into the job duties and how to help you guys sell better and how to have that success. But I really wanted to make a video and a chapter dedicated to, you're going to be working with a lot of different people, and you need to understand who you're working with. And so the reason I'm saying that is I'm originally from Iowa. I grew up in a town of 1,800 people. I had one stoplight in my town. That's way different than when I meet my buddy who's from a town or a city of 7 million people. He had a graduating class of 3,000 people. Really different experiences, really different lifestyles that we had, and here we are meeting. And so with that said, he also had a different upbringing than I had. And the reason I'm giving you guys this such a basic example is every time you walk in the OR, it's the exact same thing. You're going to be working with scrub techs, with nurses. You're going to be working with, you'll see the janitors and people cleaning, and that they're literally just there to clean the rooms. And then you'll also be working with the surgeons that are the smartest people. The reason I just stated that, those are 4 different educations and education levels. Those are 4 different salaries and money that they make. Those are 4 different mindsets that come with it. And then those are 4 different just life experiences. Everyone has a different one. And so this is why when people ask me, hey, Jacob, in sales, how do you make sure you're successful? How do you do this? And it's what I tell you guys all the time. The reason I've had success is because I've never tried to be a medical device sales rep. I've always tried to be a personal trainer. And what that means is I tried to build a relationship with each and every person I talk to and get to know their story and get to know who I'm talking to so I can know how to be able to communicate with them. Because let me sit here and tell you guys, when you're talking to a scrub tech who makes under $60,000 a year, and most of them haven't even gone to college, or maybe they have, right? But majority of the ones that I met didn't have a degree. They just graduated high school and they're making under 60 grand a year. Guess what? Majority of the time, right away, they don't like you because they know your base is more money than they make all year. Like you're going to make a commission one day that's in 1 month than they make all year. And so that's the conversation you have to have and be able to understand. And it's a different mindset because we talk about this. Hope this free course is super helpful for you all right now. If you're looking to take this to the other level and actually break in with guidance, with coaching, not just trying to figure it out and then go put it all out there with what you're learning and see if it works, but want to be like the 2,500 plus members that we've been able to break in at over $100,000, then feel free to click the link below to where you can get set up with us and our team to go over what we do in more detail. What you have to understand inside of our program, it's not just teaching you about medical device sales, it's actually giving you the education. It's setting up times to meet with our coaches. It's going into the detailed processes of all the different interviews that you could face with different companies. We're actually going to spend one-on-one time with you if you need it, going into what's going to make you stand out, what's your why, what's going to make you be the person that's continuously moving on without you guessing. Because what we've seen is a lot of people will get the information that we're sharing, but then they're second guessing themselves. They're not sure if it's true. What happens with a certain situation? We take all of that out inside of our program because we have live coaches who have been top performers inside of the industry helping you every step of the way. We're here to actually make a difference because we're all about quality, not quantity. If you're really wanting to take the next step in your career, click the link below and we can schedule a call with our team. Otherwise, keep watching this free course and hope it's helpful. And this is what this course is for, but also this being a med device. It's a different mindset to go from making 60 grand to 100 grand, 100 grand to 200 grand, 200 to 500, 500 to a million, million to 100 million. There are different mindsets for each and every place that you're going through in your life. And that's what you have to understand is I can't talk to the person who's making $60,000 because guess what? They don't hear what I say if I start talking a certain way. So you have to find out where they're at and learn how to work with their personalities. And I'm going to sit here and tell you, majority of scrub techs that I worked with were very hard people. They were very trying to prove something. They had egos. They're like, this is my OR room. I'm all this. And they had a conversation where it's usually they talk down to you because it's the one place they can get power. And you guys just have to understand that. Let them have the power. Just let them go and build the relationship. And I tell you guys, the nurses and the scrub techs, again, when they're making under $80,000, they don't like where they're at in life normally. Again, I hope you're working with people who actually love their life and they're where they want to be. I hope that. That was not my experience because, again, I also worked in the lowest performing territory, so they weren't happy to see me usually anyway. But you just have to understand that your conversation with the scrub tech and the OR nurse and then the surgeon are three different conversations because I'm not going to talk to my nurse and the scrub tech the same way I talk to my surgeon. Because guess what? My scrub tech and my nurse really don't probably care about the anatomy, but my surgeon does. And we're going to talk in those terms. And then when I'm talking to my scrub tech, I might be just talking about the device. And guess what? My surgeon's really not caring about certain things about the device. You just have to understand who you're talking to. And again, first thing I'm going to always say, and the last thing is always treat everybody with respect. Even when they don't treat you with respect, you have to make sure that at all times you're treating people better than they treat you. Because here's the honest truth. The amount of times that I got treated very poorly. And there's a couple times I retaliated and I said, you're not going to treat me like that. I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine. Those are the times that those people wouldn't say what they did. They would just say what I did. They would go tell on me to the OR director, to the charge nurse, and then I would be in the OR nurse's, the charge nurse's office or the OR director's office getting threatened to be kicked out. And let me just tell you, one time it almost happened to where if I got kicked out, I would have lost my job because it was my biggest account. I'm sitting here telling you, they don't care about you at all. They're going to treat you not the nicest a lot of times, and you just have to take it. But you have to understand, each person is coming from a different lifestyle, a different background, and different education levels, and different money. So guess what? You can talk to your surgeon. I heard this all the time. Oh, Jake, what Ferrari are you driving? I'm not driving a Ferrari on a base of, or making 135 grand at plant, right? You just, well, I hope to God you're not, because otherwise we'll have some trouble. But with that said, you just have to understand who you're talking to, and you have to understand what's going on in their world, and you have to understand that each person's going through a different thing in their life and their different mindsets. So I really wanted to make this chapter so you guys are already knowing and preparing yourself. I'm not going to have the same conversation with my scrub tech and my OR nurse and my surgeon. They're all different. And guess what? You're going to have conversations all at the same time in the room. But you also have to be able to read the room, because there's going to be comments you can make to your surgeon about finances or something, or investing or something, that you can't make to your nurse or your scrub tech. And there's going to be comments that you're going to say to the scrub tech to get that camaraderie, and you guys are just blowing the smoke. And you're not saying that to your surgeon, otherwise it's not going to go well. So just understand, to each person that you're going to work with in the OR or in your accounts, you're working with a lot of different education levels, a lot of financial and income levels, and you're also dealing with a lot of backgrounds. We're going to be talking about job duties. What are you going to be doing on the job? What are you doing on your day-to-day? Now, the thing I have to say is this is going to be different for what position you're at. An associate is going to have different job responsibilities than somebody who's a full-line sales rep or a clinical specialist. Each person is going to have a different day-to-day just because of the job title, but also what we need to talk about is what division you're in. Because like I said, some divisions, you're going to be running trays. Some of those trays could have 100 pieces in them. There's going to be also ones that when I ran trays, I only had 6 pieces in, but I also had the capital that I needed to bring in and the machines. And then there's some people who don't have any of it. So this is where it's going to be a little different, but I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about each and every section. So no matter where you're at, it's going to be helpful. Talk about job duties and what you're going to be doing on your day-to-day. And again, like we just mentioned, it's going to depend on what division you're in, what's your role. But let's talk about the most common things that I see, and we'll get really into the nitty-gritty in the below modules. Now, number one, running trays, equipment. Where are you going? Like I said, I used to have to run trays and I had to run equipment to all these different hospitals all the time. What does that actually look like? Because if you're brand new, you might not even know what running a tray means. So understand, if you are running a tray, normally if you're in ortho or again, you're in the OR, there's trays that are going inside that are going to be used for surgery. You have to make sure that every single piece that you're going to be using is inside that tray, because it's going to be then going to SPD, sterile processing, and you're going to then have it sterilized, wrapped, and then it's going to go up so then it can be used in surgery. If you are missing a piece, or if it is opened or something drops on the ground, it is no longer sterile and it can no longer be used for the surgery. So from that comment, you just heard why it is important to have multiple of each things inside of a tray, or multiple trays ready to go. Because I am sitting here telling you with all the confidence in the world, there will be a time they lose your stuff. There will be a time that they drop it on the floor. There will be a time that a scrub tech is not paying attention, doesn't care what you're saying, grabs it, throws it, grabs it, grows. And then that happened to me with I would have tubing that had to stay sterile, and they would grab it and they would just throw it on the ground. They'd be like, oh, here, attach it, throw it on the ground, even though it wasn't supposed to. And now I had to be very resourceful, because I either had to have more tubing, but again, you can only carry so much tubing when you're going into hospitals and what's allowed into the OR and everything that's there. And so then you might have to be resourceful. But again, if it's going into the trays, you need to make sure that you're having at least multiple trays if you can, because I can sit here and tell you, one time I had a case that I had 6 trays out. It's all I had in my territory. They're all at different places. I went, they had a new SPD person. The SPD person didn't tag it saying that it was sterile. It could not be used for that case. That case was with a brand new surgeon, and it was going to be a trial. They then used our old stuff. They did not like it. I did not get that doctor. If I would have had that second tray, we would have been okay. But again, what does running trays mean? It means that you're running them. So if I would always check, what cases do I have? And if I had a case on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I would be on Monday, be running my trays there. Or if it was on Friday, maybe I go on Monday, or usually on Wednesdays. I usually would turn my trays in about 24 to 48 hours before, because anything before that, then if you're 4 days before, then you're looking for it. If you have a good relationship with the hospital, great. But a lot of times their hospital is so big, there's different staff. You don't know where it's at. SPD doesn't know where they put it. And then you're there looking for the tray. And that's a whole nother beast when you get in, and this literally will happen where they'll be like, go look for it. We don't know where it's at. They tagged it. They don't know what they tagged it. And you go down and you are now in a room full of 150 plus trays. And now you have to look. And when I say 150 plus, I mean, there's actually been times it's 1,000 trays. It is literally giant rooms full of just trays everywhere. And you now are going to search for one tray that they all look the same, because they're all wrapped in blue or wrapped to how they wrap them. And you're just looking for your tag. So that's what's running trays. Is you're going to go run them, take them to the SPD department. You're going to fill out when the surgery is. You're going to fill out who's it with, what's the procedure, and then you're going to put the time and date, and then you're going to put your contact information, and then you will go drop it. You'll tag it into the SPD department, which each one's different, and each place is going to be different. So for example, I used to have SPD departments that normally, from my experience, are going to be in the basement or they're going to be on the first floor of a hospital. But I've been part where they were on the second or third floor. So you just have to learn each and every place that you're going. But you just understand that when you're running a tray, it's going to be a winding road. And my advice to you guys is if you've never done it before, you need to give yourself at least an hour at an account because it can take a lot the first 3-6 months. Even with cases, when I was trying to go places, I'd always get there a little early. And when I say a little early, about an hour early, and there's sometimes I still barely made it to the case because you're trying to find out where you're going in the hospital. You don't know that. So just being able to learn how to navigate the hospital, the SPD. But again, just running trays, you're going to be taking them to an account. And then what you have to remember, though, is after that, they're going to go back down to SPD, and then SPD is going to clean them real quick. And then you have to go find them. And here's where the hunt really starts is some SPD departments are great. They'll leave it all, and there is all your stuff in one. But majority of the time, what happens is SPD doesn't care especially if they don't own it, and then they're just throwing it everywhere. And now you are doing a scavenger hunt looking for your pieces. There's been times where, again, this is a tip. You guys need to take a picture before you process your SPD, your trays with SPD, because there were times SPD lost our stuff. There was times SPD got a $30,000 bill from us because they lost what they were borrowing and renting. And so you need to take a picture. And I can sit here and tell you guys also that if you don't take that picture, it's happened to me where they lose it and then they blame you and they're like, you didn't even bring it. You didn't even put it in the tray. It wasn't in the tray. I remember it wasn't. And that happened to me one time. The OR director was like, I bet you didn't even bring it. I bet it wasn't even in the tray. You're just blaming us. And I had to show her the picture. I said, see the time, see the date, see the tag. That's your facility. And I had to make her eat her words, but they're always going to blame you. So you need to make sure that you're always taking a photo when you're checking it in, what it looks like, and know that every piece is there because they will put you down if they can, and they won't blame themselves. But number two, you need to take a picture. So the accountability of most likely they will probably lose your stuff, especially if you're in the cases where your trays have 50 to 100 pieces. I can almost guarantee you, you're not getting those back. And I've talked to ortho reps who are searching for their stuff for an hour and a half in SPD after a case. So just be realizing that. But again, after cases, you're going to have to go pick those trays up and then you run them. So for example, I had 5 or 6 loaner trays in my territory, and then I would just go and run from there. And so again, what that means is I had 6 trays that I could then go drop off at accounts for different surgeries. But again, the whole goal, and I hope this is for you, is that they own your trays and then you just show up. Because if they own it, then they have to get it all set. But you can go down, you can make sure that it's all good to go and before it's all sterile, and you can just help them. But when the hospital owns it, it's a whole different story than when they're borrowing it for a case or you're doing a trial and they need to get your stuff. And then you need to also have a printout of what they need to do for your SPD. The most common thing, they're going to be like, how does this need to be sterilized? You'll get a PDF and your company should have it, and it'll be a sterilizing guide that you can then give to them. So just make sure that you guys are going through this. But when it comes to running tray, that is what they mean when they say, hey, I need you to go run a tray. You're going to be running it for a future case. You're going to use that tray in a case. And then afterwards, you actually have to remember to go pick up that case. Real quick note is I would put it in your notes, who you're running them to. When you dropped it off, take a picture of it, and then delete it once you've picked it up, because I can sit here and tell you from experience, when you're being a full line rep, you're traveling 2 different states, you're all by yourself, and you have 32 surgeries going on in the next 7 days, you can forget where you put a tray. You can forget that, oh, I never picked it up at this hospital. And so that's a note that will help you guys take it to the next level, because I've been in that place where I one time didn't do that, and then I had to drive to all my different accounts that I had from the previous week and go find that tray. Let's talk about handling different accounts. So again, this is going back to every single account you're going to deal with is very different. And even if it's in the exact same specialty. So let's just talk about, you have the accounts where the surgeon's office are, that they're going to be going and visiting, but you also have the hospital accounts. You also have the surgery center accounts, that they're all very different. So you just have to understand, you could be working with a variety. And again, some people that are watching this might be like, nope, Jacob, I only work with one. Great. That's awesome. But from my experience, I did in-office procedures, I did surgery center procedures, and I did hospital procedures. Also, I'd have to go into the offices to have lunches with surgeons. Each place has a different staff, has different regulations, has different rules, and it's just learning where you're going to be going. And so why I wanted to talk about handling different accounts is because, again, you guys are going to be going in, you're going to be having those talks at the accounts that are for example, a surgery center. It's ran very similar to an OR at a hospital, but usually it's not as intense, right? Because it is an outpatient setting compared to if you're in a hospital, it's going to be very more regulated. There's going to be a lot of the power trips that we see. And then when you're going into an actual account, just remember you're working with a lot of people that are just working the front desk and then some MAs and maybe a nurse or two, but it's people where the doctors or the surgeons are actually seeing the patients and getting stuff scheduled. And so just understanding that the different accounts you're going into are going to have different attire. So for example, the reason I wanted to make this is I wore these 95% of my time. But when I did business reviews, when I was doing lunches, I tried to dress up as professional as possible. But let me make this clear is, yes, there's days I went into lunches dressed like this because I had surgeries right before and I had surgeries right after. I was able to drive real quick, do the lunch and come back. There's going to be days, and again, they're usually not going to shoot you down too much, but when you want to be making a first impression, I always just try to dress as professional as possible. Now, what I will say is you're not going to need to wear a suit and tie. The one thing I will say is you only wear that during the interview process. I don't know why it's such a big deal because then you're never going to wear it again. But that's my own opinions on it. A lot of times when I went for as a guy, it was just going to be khaki pants. And then I would have like a very nice dress shirt on, belt, watch, something like that. The one thing I will say with that, if you're wearing belt, if you're wearing a watch, if you're wearing shoes, you do not want to be wearing stuff that's very, very expensive. And again, even with your car, I know a lot of times you'll get a car stipend, but you don't want to be pulling up in a very nice car. You don't want to be pulling up with a $10,000 watch on because that's going to give a certain reflection. And you got to remember, who are we talking to? If we're in an office, we're talking with MAs that are making $19 an hour, right? You're talking to these people. And if they see that you come in with all this flashy stuff, it's going to make you look really bad. And no different than that to hospitals. And you're probably not going to be wanting to wear that as you're changing into your scrubs and go get your stuff all ready to go anyway. So just remember, when you guys are doing dress attire, dress appropriate. Remember who you're going to talk to. Just nice business setting, business casual is what I usually would go with, and go and have those great lunches. But again, that just takes us into, okay, are we going into the in-office setting, or are you going into the surgery center? Are you going into labs? Everybody's going to be different. But I wanted to take a moment just to talk about, hey, there's going to be different accounts that you're going to, but with that, who are you trying to talk to at those accounts? Are you going into prospect? Are you going in to set up a lunch? Are you going in for a meeting? Are you going in to get new business? Are you going in to talk with the OR director? Are you going to talk with supply chain? Just understand where you're going and why you're going there, because the one thing I will sit here and we will go in the modules underneath this is confidence is key. If you go into certain hospitals and you don't have confidence and they ask, where are you going? And you just go, I'm trying to go here. They will catch you and they'll actually try to kick you out, because some of those hospitals are very hardcore compared to if you're like, nope, got a surgery at 1 o'clock with Dr. Whatever. They won't blink twice. You said it so confidently, you walk off. And again, the reason I'm telling you guys this, we will talk about this later, but going into prospecting, a lot of times I didn't have appointments. A lot of times I wasn't supposed to be at a hospital, but you got to be at the hospital to get deals done. So we'll go into that, but I wanted to make sure that you guys know about the different accounts and that's who you could be dealing with. When it comes to job duties, I wanted to make sure just to give you guys a list, because I know we've talked about running trays and what other things you could be doing meeting hospital staff, but I really wanted to just give you a list of it. Just remember, this is going to be in the downloadable PDFs that you guys have availability to. But for example, some of the things I said, and when I put these, it's no particular order of what you need to go, but let me just list you off some of the things that I put. Cold call accounts, schedule lunches, run equipment and trays, communicate with surgery schedulers, place orders, forecast future sale opportunities, cover cases, communicate with customer service, coordinate schedules with teammates to see who or and if when can cover cases, attend mandatory conference calls, complete mandatory trainings, complete mandatory projects for managers, set up trials, network with other reps and accounts, make sure you're hitting quota, dealing with problems with accounts and company, email with customers, potential customers, answering any questions, and giving in services to a whole hospital staff. When you look at what are you responsible for your job, all those plus more. And the easiest thing I can always just say is it's wearing a million different hats. And so I always just used to say that on the podcast, but I really want you guys to understand that your job is basically everything. And you're like, well, what does that entail? You will learn it as you go, but these are a whole list as you go. And the reason I'm saying that is each account, each company, each division is going to be different. You're going to have to do things that I never had to do, and that another person will never have to do. So just understand in your certain area that you might have stuff specific just to you, but understand what you just heard from everything I said is why we talk about it's drinking from a fire hose. You're learning all those, but not also are you just learning that and everything I just mentioned. You're having to learn each person at those different accounts. You're trying to learn their system. You're trying to learn how this surgeon is, who's their scheduler, who's their practice, where are they at, what's their background, and each and every person that sprinkles down underneath it. Plus, you're going to be like, oh, I have a quota if you're a full-line rep or even associate, you're helping with quotas. Okay, you're now breaking down your quota. What do you have to do to actually attain that? You need to be setting up trials. You need to be setting up breakfasts, lunches, prospecting to go get new doctors. And we're going to go into all of that. But what I want you guys to see is I always joke around. Your job as a medical device sales rep is just putting out fires all day. It is just professional firefighting, because I will give this example real quick. Is there was one time I'm in New Mexico. I have 3 cases going on back home in Phoenix, and then I'm getting emails, and in a span of 15 minutes, I got 9 emails and I got 3 calls, all from different accounts that were all pretty urgent, that needed to have answers back while I'm waiting for a case that's about to start in 10 minutes. And then I had a case after that, and I had then drive back to the airport so I could get back in time and not miss my flight. And so that's the kind of days that do happen at medical device sales. So going into what's the job duties, just understand there's a lot of them. And each division and each company is going to have different ones, that things I mentioned and things I didn't mention. That's why you need to be networking and talking with everybody so you can learn everything that you need to be doing. But also, it's why we always say be a sponge and always be open to learning, because every single day you're going to be learning. The amount of reps I've talked to that have been doing this for 15, 20 years, and they're like, I still learn something new each week. It's so true. Let's talk about prospecting. And when it comes to prospecting, the one thing I need to state is that it's going to matter on where you're at, what position you're holding, what your territory is running at. And what I mean by that is, if you're an associate for a territory that's already running 122% a plan, well, they're not going to have you do a lot of prospecting, because most likely, number one, you're just going to be covering cases. And then number two, you're already above plan, so you don't really need to be doing a lot of prospecting, right? But that's going to depend on where you're at. And then it's also going to depend if you're a full line rep or an associate, right? Because an associate most of the time is not going to be doing as much prospecting as somebody who would be the full line rep. But associates, make sure that you do take the note that this is one way that you will be able to stand out, is if you do know how to prospect and you do some prospecting while you're in that position. But when you are prospecting, the one thing I need to state is you just need to know who you're going after. So what I mean by that is, when I was at Medtronic, I was going after OBGYNs that did hysteroscopy. That was it. I wasn't going for anybody else. Those were my surgeons that I was going after. Compared to where I'm at now, I'm working with general surgery, I'm working with OBGYNs, I'm working with urology, and I will in the future be working with more departments. But also with that, inside that, I'm not just going after surgeons, I'm going after residency directors. I am going after faculty and attendees. I'm actually going after residents as well. So you have to understand, who are you even going after? But when we're talking about prospecting, what is it important and what does it normally look like? Number one thing I have to say is, normally prospecting is you're trying to grow the territory, and then you're trying to find competitive doctors or doctors that aren't using your devices that you're selling, and you're trying to convert them. But are you going for the people who do the most volume? Are you going with the people who do the most patients and see the most patients? You just have to understand what's going on and where you're going after. So for example, what either happens is you'll go get just new surgeons that were competitive surgeons, and maybe they don't do a lot of volume, but then you might go after surgeons that do a lot of volume and they're using somebody else. Or there's surgeons that you're already with, but they only use you for certain things, but they could be using you for other indications that you could actually be utilizing. And so just understanding where you're going to be going after is a big thing. But the reason I wanted to state it is, those are the 3 most common ways you're going to be prospecting, is you're going after surgeons, but those different cases. Here's the comment I do have to say. If you're going to go spend your time, it better be worth it. So for example, I did have surgeons that would come in when I didn't know what I was doing, and I would get a couple surgeons that transferred over to me, and they came and joined my team, and they came and joined and used our product, and I was so excited. But they did 2 surgeries a month. Great, but not really enough to move the needle, because if you looked at it, hey, that one surgeon is great and I really enjoyed them, but they did, in the 12 months, they did 24 cases, compared to their surgeons out there doing 24 cases in a week. 24 cases in a month, right? And those are the higher volume doctors. So that's where you need to be learning how to do the prospecting. So the number one thing I can say is, just like when people who didn't have sales experience wanted to break into this industry, I always told them, hey, you need to be having an Excel sheet. No different than here. You should have an Excel sheet of going after who's your prospects. When did you talk with them? What are notes about those conversations that you learned about their surgery scheduler or about that office? And you just need to be making sure that you're taking notes and having an Excel sheet of the people that you're going after, because just like we talk about everything, most likely it's not going to happen on the first time. So when you're prospecting, you just need to be able to understand who you're going after and then how you're going to be going about it. Then that takes us into the second part on how you are going to go about it. So number one, the easiest thing I can actually say is that you could be going and talking to your surgeons you're already working with and asking their recommendations and getting a warm lead on who you need to go talk to. So for example, I'd go talk to my surgeon and I'd be like, hey, I'm so glad this case went well. And I should say that you only do it after a good case. You should not do it after a bad case. Read the room. So after a good case, you're going to go, hey, doc, really enjoyed working with you today. And I know you really benefit and you really like using our devices or our technology. Do you know anybody else who could benefit from this? They're going to tell you colleagues that they think would benefit. And what I mean by that is they're going to tell you other surgeons that you should go talk to. Now, here's the thing. Two things usually happen. Either one, they're already using you, and you say, doc, actually, that person's already using us. Thank you. Yeah, it's great. Awesome. But otherwise, they're competitors. And then what happens is then you would go to those offices, and then when I would go to set that meeting, I would name drop the doctor I was just with. So if I was with Dr. A, I would say, hey, my name's Jacob. I'm here to talk with Dr. B, but I wanted to see about setting up a lunch because Dr. A highly recommended me and highly recommended them to me. And so the reason I'm saying that is I'm not just here asking for a meeting. I was told by Dr. A to actually set up a meeting with Dr. B. And when I did that, majority of the time, I would say probably 7 out of the 10 times I got the meeting, because again, you're coming from a warm and it's now another doctor saying you need to have them do that. And then also, if depending on your relationship, you could have the doctor you just talked to text that doctor or tell them that they should meet with you. So you can just be able to use those warm leads. That's a big thing that's going to go with you and get you successful. Then number two, what you can do is you can be looking at the OR board. So you have to be very careful on how you do this. But what you will notice is when you go into the OR, there's going to be a list of surgeries, and they're going to say what surgery, what room it's in, who's it with, and who's the doctor performing that exact surgery. Well, for example, if I did hysteroscopy at the time and I would go on the board and I see 7 hysteroscopies and I knew I only had 2 surgeries that day, well, then I would be like, well, 5 are not using me. Now, are they using my competitor, or are they just using another scope that's not using my competitor? And so then I would be able to look. But the thing I'll say is if you sit there and look at it and write it down, you will get kicked out of the OR majority of the time. You can't show that you're trying to grab business. So for me, what I would do is I would be like grabbing stuff, or sometimes I would go talk. I'd stop by the board, act like I'm looking. And when I would have it, I'd actually have my phone by me, take a picture of the board so I could go back and look at it later. Because the amount of times that I would see a doctor, again, because I was new to the territory and didn't know who they were, I could then go, hey, doctor, whatever, OBGYN. Bam. I would pull them up. I'd see who they are. I'd find out what clinic they're at. Now I know who to go cold call, right? That's number one. Number two, you also know if they're in the OR, you know what time their surgeries are, and you know when they're going to be there. Now you know how to be over there just in that general area at that time, right? And the amount of times I actually came back to the OR and I was just checking on a case, or I was restocking shelves at the same time that a competitive doctor was actually doing a case, quote unquote, coincidence, was a lot. And I would be able to meet them and I'd be like, oh, hi, my name is Jacob. And then again, we'll go into the other details of how you would have that conversation. But again, that's another thing, how you can prospect. So you can ask another surgeon, or the surgeon you're working with. You can look at the OR boards. Those are going to be probably your 2 best bets when you're looking at prospecting and trying to grow a territory. But number 3 is, if you just don't know where you're at and you don't know what you're doing, Like, for example, my first couple of weeks, I had no help. I had nobody to be there to hold my hand or teach me. What you can actually do is you can go onto the hospital websites. You can then search in the top right hand, there's usually a search bar. You can actually search specialties. So, for example, I could go into any hospital, I could search OBGYN doctors, and a list of the doctors that are affiliated with that hospital will pop up. That's how you're gonna get a lot of value because then you can go and check on them. Now, the conversation I have to have, though, is you don't know how much volume they're doing. For me, like, they're OBGYNs, but are they even doing hysteroscopy? That's where it can be tricky. You can actually look at the website. Sometimes they'll tell you that it's doing a hysteroscopy or that person's doing a procedure, but a lot of times they don't. They just actually say, "Hey, this is where they're from. This is how long they've been with the hospital system." So those are my 3 big tips, but again, knowing that you should have an Excel sheet, you should be tracking this when you're going to talk with them, and then you should be able to continue to go set up lunches and do the cold calling to make sure that you can set up those meetings, but have a list of who you've talked to, when you talked to them, what were notes about the conversation, so you continue to go because there's gonna be a lot of people a lot of times, and for me, there'd be so many times I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to talk to this doctor," or I'm in a case and then I see one of the doctors that were on the OR board. "Oh, I met with them a while ago. What did I remember?" I would go and pull up that sheet. I would know what to go bring up to them before I would go and talk to them. Again, looking like I remembered everything that we had a conversation about, and then be able to either lead into a new case, lead into a new lunch, lead into a new conversation. So, those are some tips on prospecting. Setting up breakfast, lunch, business meetings. How do you do it and what's happening during them? So, we're going to talk about why you're setting up these lunches or these breakfasts, what they look like, and then how you actually run a successful one and actually get them set up. So, number one, how you're even getting them set up. You're going to be doing the cold calling that we talked about. You're going to be doing the prospecting. So once you've got that prospect list or you know who you're going after, then you actually got to go quote unquote cold call or warm call, right? If you got a recommendation from another surgeon, then it's a warm call and you actually have some actual ammunition to go in there with. But if you just saw them on the OR board or you don't know who they are, it's quote unquote a cold call. And it's the first time you're making a touch point. So when you're going in there, the thing that I learned the most is what most reps will do will be like, "Hey, my name's Jacob and I'm with this company. I was here to see Doctor whatever. Would he be available or she be available?" The amount of times that when I first started doing that, I would get shot down where it was above 7 out of 10 times I would get shut down because that's what every rep's doing and that's what they're looking for. Now, this comes back to knowing who you're speaking with. I found out while I was working this job is most of the people that are working the front desk are people that are working for about $19 to $22 an hour, and that they're people that are just kind of getting by there. I wouldn't say that they're the most driven people. And again, I'm not saying that that's not true for every single person. I'm just saying from my experience with who I worked with, it was usually a clientele, the gatekeepers that I was working with, the surgery schedulers and all them that were in the front. It was just the front office clerks that they weren't really motivated. Their whole goal, they get told to keep reps out of here. Don't let them come in, or they'll take your stuff and throw it right in the trash. So what I always did, and where I started having a lot of success is I would walk in and I would introduce myself. I say, "Hey, my name is Jacob." And then I would say, for example, if I saw him at a certain hospital on the board, I would say, "Hey, I just worked with Dr. A, B, and C at this hospital, and I saw Dr. A was there, got to say hi to him or say hi to her." And then I'd be like, and they asked me to come and schedule a meeting or they asked me to schedule a lunch. And so I just wanted to see when would be a time to bring you and your office. And now the reason I'm making such a big emphasis on this, on you and your office, when you start asking about, is there a time for the doctor? You're now saying, "Hey, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about the doctor because this is going to benefit me." But if you can say, "Hey, when would be a good time for me to bring you and your staff lunch?" You just said the magic words to these people working the front desk. They only care about the food they're getting for lunch, and they have a lot of reps bring them different stuff. But if you go from just asking to set up a lunch to bringing them lunch, they'll be like, "Oh yeah," because the reason I can say that is the amount of lunches I set up that I didn't even bring up the doctor's name. They never even asked who I was. They actually just signed me up and they're like, "What product do you have?" And I was like, "Oh, this." And they're like, "Okay, cool." Showing that they didn't care what I was selling because they don't know. The doctor doesn't actually know because the doctor's not even going to see it until he or her come in and they're like, "Oh, I have this lunch today. Great. What? And they'll sit down. What do you got for me? They didn't even know about it, right? It's just you show up. So the conversation though is what can you say to the desk keepers or the front desk or front gatekeepers to get yourself in there? And that's what I learned is if you can just say, what can I bring you and your staff for lunch? They 7 out of 10 times said yes. Oh yeah, here, just signed up. And then what I always said to them was like, hey, what do you guys really enjoy? Because I'm not trying to be like every other rep. I know you guys get a lot of sandwiches. I know you get a lot of soups, and they're like, oh my God, yes, we're sick of them, right? How do I stand out? So then I'd be like, what do you guys like? I really would love to learn that. And then they would tell you, hey, yeah, we like A, B, and C from this place. And then I would just write it down, get all the details, how many people, any diet restrictions, anything that I should know about, and then reconfirm the time and then get a contact information and then be like, great, I will see you next Thursday at 12 o'clock. And then you would also just say, hey, what time does it start? What time do the doctors go to lunch? Because again, what you'll find out is sometimes they'll tell you 11 because the staff starts going to food at 11, but the doctor's not going to be in there till 1. So I had to find out the hard way several times. So again, just making sure that you have those details. But again, what I'm saying is when I went in and I set up those lunches by, again, making it about the person I was talking to and not the person that I was trying to see, it made the biggest difference in the world. So now that you would actually, quote unquote, have it scheduled, how do you actually run it? Why are we doing this? So again, for me, and when we did the breakfast and the lunches, it was you are now going there to bring your product to demo, to show them, and to have a conversation with your doctors, your surgeons. And so when you're going to go in there, I would always have printable handouts so they could have it. You would have your business cards. I usually would staple it on so they could have it together. And then I would bring extra business cards and extra handouts. And then I would bring the device that I'm coming up with. So for example, I had a hysteroscope, but then we had blades that we used with it. And then there's videos that showed it. So I always had the videos ready to go because then what I would have is I would get it all set up really nice. They would walk in, they would see what was a hysteroscope, they would see the marketing for it so they could grab it, look at it. They'd grab my scope, kind of look at it. I would talk about the different blades, and then I would show them the video, and they would be like, oh, and again, because you want the doctor or the surgeon to be able to see themselves playing with it, actually doing the procedure. And so that was my conversation with them. But that is to be said after I knew that they were interested. Because, for example, the amount of times that I did a lunch and they're like, oh, I use your competitor. I love them. I don't even want to hear about it, right? That's where I should have done a little more research, talked with them at the OR or talked with somebody and found out who they're using and what is the relationship and the commitment level, number one. But number two, what most people will do is they'll start selling right away. And we don't know that person at all. And so this is where it's going to be dependent on the person, the mood, and also the timing. So for example, there are so many times I was in and doing a breakfast or a lunch and they would come in and they'd be like, oh, what do you want? I got 2 minutes. I knew that it was going to be an interesting conversation for the fact of like, hey, I need to learn real quick what they're using, why they use it, how long they've been using it, and do they have any complications with it? And am I able to help? Right? Because if you just start going selling, they'll be like, yeah, great, cool, bye. And they just got whatever they wanted and they didn't even hear it because they're just focused on what they want, right? Because if they don't know there's a need, if they don't know that you have something better and they're not having a problem, they're not even going to listen to you, even if there is a real need for it because they don't see it. So the first thing you got to do is when you're meeting these people is being able to have that conversation, build a little rapport real quick, and just know that not everybody is going to be a client. Not everybody's actually a quote unquote prospect, even at this point, because what I've learned is there's some people, for example, I had one surgeon, met with him. He was actually a big decision maker at one of the hospitals I was working at. And they're like, you need this guy's sign off. I went and talked with him. I left it. They said they would have a lunch. They actually called me back. They're like, hey, he actually said he's not going to do a lunch with you because he's been best friends with the competitor rep for 7 years. He absolutely loves them. And then I got on a phone call with him and he's like, I don't care if you have a better product or it's way cheaper. I'm never going to use you because I'm best friends with the other rep. That was the relationship, right? So just being able to understand. But then what's happening at these breakfasts and lunches, again, that's where we talked about you're going to be pitching and you're going to be showing them your product. But here's some success tips that I can have for you guys is so I used an app called Easy Cater. And the reason I say that is that was a place that I could type in the address and then I would be able to put how many people, any diet restrictions, and then I could say what time and what date I needed delivered. And then even as early as that morning, but normally I did it the day before. And then I could get it all scheduled. It would just all bill, and then they'd take care of all the catering. And then most people will make you have a sign-in sheet, so you can do the sign-in sheet, have them sign. Now the thing I just wanna tell you guys, if you've never done this before, you will have a sign-in sheet. They will tell you there's 25 people, and you'll have 3 people actually sign your sign-in sheet. And for me, when I was at a different company, you had to have all the names. So sometimes there were some interesting names on that list. I'm just telling you guys so you know that. But again, when it comes to the meetings, the breakfast, the lunches, it's just, hey, you're going to go get it set by making it about that person. Once you get it set, we're actually going to go get it all prepared and get it ready to go, be it easy cater or whatever you want to do. Again, my highly big recommendation is that you actually get it catered and you have them drop it off. I've done it where I've gone and picked it up. It added way more time and way more stress to my day. So again, just have them deliver it. And then to make your life easy, then when you get in, I always would get there a little early. I'd set everything up and then make it a nice presentation. And then this is where we'll talk about it in the next modules, but then it's going to come down to selling, because then we need to see where that person's at. We're going to see how the conversation is going, and we'll be able to see, is this even an opportunity? But that's how you go to do your breakfast, your lunches, your meetings. Just being able to get them set and scheduled is the hardest part. But then from there, once you get into the breakfast and lunch, how are you going to be effective with it? So we will get into it in the next modules. Let's talk about dinners. So we talked about breakfast and lunches, but the reason I wanted to make a whole segment by itself about dinners, it's a totally different play and a different game, because when you're at doing a breakfast or you're doing a lunch, you're normally going to be at the office of the surgeon or the doctor that you're speaking with. But when you're doing a dinner, normally you're going to a nice restaurant or a nice place to then have a conversation, and you're going to have some conversation about a business and what you're selling and what you guys can work together with. But that doesn't mean that's the whole conversation. I can say from experience, normally 80% of the conversation has nothing to do with your business. It has nothing to do with the products you're selling. You're just getting to know them. And normally it's going to be at a decently nice place that is going to have very good food. It's going to be at a nice restaurant in a good area, and you're going to be usually having a drink or two. That's normally how it goes. And the reason I wanted to make this conversation is it really matters on how you handle the conversation and how you handle this atmosphere. Because you, like we talked about, you always want to get to know somebody. You don't want it always to be about work, because again, they want to see that you're a human being too. But you can't cross those lines. There's certain lines you just can't do. And I'm sitting here telling you guys, as everyone in this course, one thing you cannot do, and I hope you never do, is you can't sleep with people you work with. You can't sleep with your surgeon, because I'm sitting here telling you guys, I've watched it too many times where people think they can. And unless you're going to marry that person, it probably is not going to work out well, because otherwise, let me play out a couple scenarios. Number one, if that surgeon is a high volume surgeon and you're with them and then it's going great until it doesn't, guess who that surgeon is no longer going to want to see after it doesn't go well? You. Guess what they're going to do? Two things. They're either going to go use your competitor because they don't want to see you anymore, or they're going to get you replaced. Because guess what? If they're doing millions of dollars in revenue for that company, do you think that company cares about keeping you for a couple $100,000? No, they'll get rid of you, find someone else that the doctor likes to use. So you have to be really smart about what you're doing. And then also, when you do that, you just become known as the person who is just, you don't want to be that person. You get known as the person who has no skills. You're just sleeping your way to the top, and it's not going to go over well for you. So the reason I just say that is because I'm not saying that every dinner and all these dinners that's going to happen, but you just have to be aware, because especially if you're going in and it's a dinner at 7 o'clock at a very nice restaurant, you're going to meet with somebody. It's a nice ambiance, and you're going to be able to have wine and drink and nice dinner, eat nice dinners. You just have to understand the situation you're at, but you have to understand that, yes, you're going to talk about being a human. You're going to talk about a lot of different things. And I'll just be honest, a lot of these people that you'll go to dinners with, and this isn't just surgeons, this is just business, right? Business meetings. This could be not with just a surgeon. It could be with medical device companies. It could be with whatever account you're at, and you're getting to know these people.
at certain times, you don't know where they're at in life. You don't know if they're married, if they're happily married, if they have kids, if they're divorced, what's their status. And like, you just have to be making sure you can get to know people, but you also have to keep it professional at all times. And so that's a common question I get if you go into work events or working with these people. How do you cross that line? So again, I always tell people, be a human being, read the room, be able to go with it. But if you start seeing things getting a little loose and seeing things going a certain way, make sure that you're holding it and playing it correctly, because the worst thing you can do is do what I just mentioned, and now you're that person, or you fooled around, or you said some things that you probably shouldn't have said, that that surgeon or that person is not going to forget and they're going to remember for a long time. So that can always make a big difference. So now that I've told you not to do some of those bad things, we're going to talk about what you should do at these dinners. Is again, from my experience and when I had success, was it was having dinner. It was being able to have the conversations. The one thing I will say is, most of the time with a dinner, you're going to have how much money you can actually spend from your company. They're going to say how many drinks you guys can actually get, or girls can actually get. And so what you need to make sure to do is you need to make sure to budget. You need to make sure to go. And sometimes you will have to go to the restaurant early and be like, hey guys, I'm going to be having a group of people, or I'm having someone else join me. I can only spend this much money. So I need you guys to be able to protect this. I need you guys. Sometimes they can make special menus, or they can have menus that have certain prices on it so they can go and change it from. But you just need to make sure to have those conversations beforehand, so it doesn't get too loose and it doesn't get too crazy, and then your company's mad at you, or they reject it and they don't want to pay for it because it's too much. So those are conversations you need to have. And then when you are in that environment, in that conversation, they come from dinner. Again, I never went straight into business. I always just was like, how's your day going? How's it been? How's the week been? Really excited to meet with you. And again, it's just going to go dependent on your relationship. Is it a surgeon who's used you for a long time and you guys know each other, or you ladies know each other? Or is it, this is the first time you've ever met with them? What are they using before? Can you find out details of what they've been using, how long they've been using it, what's the relationship with the other company or the rep, right? You need to know that different stuff, for example, so you can have the ammo, but be able to have the conversation. And like I said, 80% is just going to be able to get talking. You're going to be just getting to know each other. And then from there, that's when you can start having the conversation of, eventually at some point, it's going to lead into the conversation of your product. You can have those conversations, and then if all goes well, the goal is to actually get them to sign on to a couple cases, if they're a competitive doctor, to just try you out and be able to set up those trials, which we will go in later modules. But again, just being able to have those conversations and run it the right way. The one thing I will say, what's helped me and have a lot of success, is when I'm trying to get to know somebody, I'm trying to get to know all of them. What made them want to become a surgeon? How long did they know they want to do that? What made them go into the specialty they wanted to be? Do they have any kids? Are they married, right? Like, you need to get to know that person, because I can guarantee you, if you continue to talk about them and you just get to learn more about them, number one, you're building so much rapport. But number two, they start to trust you. And then what's actually going to happen is, it's just human nature. Once someone's talked about themselves for a long time, eventually they're going to say, what about yourself? What about you? And they're going to get to know you as a human being. And then you guys can have a conversation, but then it can lead you just talking about why you chose that company, why you're with who you're with, right? Why you believe so strongly about your product. And they just get to know you more. And then again, then you can go into the benefits and all that. But that's where I'm just, again, going back to being a personal trainer. It's about the relationships first, being able to have those conversations and then go from there. Because again, I'm the first person to say, you can't sell everybody. Not everybody's an actual prospect. Not everybody wants to use your product. But I think somebody who was really good that I really enjoyed was, I listened to them and they said, you can't turn a no into a yes, but you can turn a maybe into a yes. And I really enjoyed that, because it's the absolute truth. If somebody is best friends with the other rep, they used them for 20 years, they always show up, you're not convincing them. But if you can learn that, hey, you know, they use it, but they've only used it because they used it in residency. Yes, they sometimes have some complications. They're always open to trying new things, or they haven't tried something in a long time. Would they be open to trialing your new stuff, right? Just being able to have those conversations and finding out about them, what makes them tick. Because during those stories that they're going to tell you in those conversations, you're going to learn about that person. You can maybe find a common theme of what's important to them, right? Is it saving time? Is it about money? Is it about, relationships? You're going to learn that by all the conversations you're having with them. And then that will be able to take you into the next conversation. So again, I just wanted to make sure during these conversations at dinner that you handle it very well and you handle it correctly. But also, when you're going in and you're going to go do those selling points that we'll talk into in later modules, you're not just going in and being the salesy, pushy rep, because nobody wants to do that. And that's my biggest complaint is so many times in the corporate world, people are robots and they only think about business and that's it. And they can't actually unwind and they can't have a real human connection and talk like a real person and just be able to be vulnerable for a second. So that is how you will handle a dinner, and we'll get into selling after this. Relationship building. This is going to be the most important thing you do in medical device sales, because without a relationship, you don't have business. Like I said before, the most important thing I have ever done and has given me so much success in medical device sales is I never tried to be the medical device sales rep. I tried to be the personal trainer, the person who made relationships with each and every person I talked to. And it's why I had success, because I could tell you Mary, the scrub tech, had 2 daughters, and she had been a scrub tech for the last 7 years, and she was able, that's what made the difference. That's what made them like you. That's what made them actually help you. When you're not in the room, they're talking about you. They're trying to sell to doctors for you. It's building those relationships. And like I said, you're going to be talking to different people, but I wanted to make this because I want you guys to know the most important thing you're going to do in medical device sales is your relationship building. It's being able to have people like you. And the reason I say that is, of course, we want to be selling the best product. And I hope you guys are, because you should be believing in what you're selling. But after that, after it's the best product, people have to like to work with you, because I do know so many reps that are absolute jerks. And like we talked about at the beginning, where they just think they're better than someone else and they act like this, and people hate them in the OR room. They lose so much business so many times, because if people don't like to work with them and people don't want to be around them, AKA the staff or the doctor, they're not going to be in there anymore. Because you have to understand, there's your competitor that we talked about. Even though you might be this much better or you do this a little different, guess what? It still gets the job done. So you have to understand, yes, you might sell the better product, but if you're a jerk, if you're someone that they don't want to be around, it's not going to help your business. And so that was always my goal. How can I, number one, be a resource, but how can I have it to where they just absolutely love you? And that was my whole comment and my whole goal with people was, I'm going to go get to know them and I'm going to build that relationship. Because again, just like your territory is not going to turn around in 3 weeks, either is a relationship. You got to think about when you guys are dating and you girls are dating. You don't find someone and in 2 weeks you're like, yep, let's get married, right? And if you did, I hope it worked out. But normally people aren't going to have that much trust right away. It's going to take time, and I knew that. I knew that scrub tech and that nurse that I'm going to be talking to, it's going to take 3, 6, 9 months to get to know them. But you know what happened? Instead of me coming in, talking about my product, which I never did, talking about, oh, here's who I am, here's where I was. No, I said, hey, my name's Jacob. And then I'd get to know them and I'd say, how long have you been doing this? What got you into this? Why did you want to do this? What's your goals with this? What's your family like? Where are you from? And those are the easy questions to ask that nobody does, because guess what? When you don't ask those questions and you don't actually take the time to learn about that person, you're just showing that you just care about yourself. And now let me just say this, you can't do that at every single account, and I get that. But guess what? If you have a top account that does the majority of your business, you better be the best friend of every single person in there. You better be really nice. What I always did, I would be a resource and I'd always help out in my accounts and I'd always help out during the surgeries. And then at the end of it, I would be like, thank you so much, guys. You truly mean the world to me. I appreciate you and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Even when they did nothing, even when I did their jobs for them, even when they just sat on their butts and they just complained and I was the one who did it all, I still said that, because after that, they still would go, wow, Jacob's really nice. There's a couple times I was very lucky that I got to walk out and I forgot to go grab the numbers, or I forgot to talk to the surgeon real quick. I walk in and they're talking about me and how sweet I am. That's what the winning formula is when you can be an expert at what you do, have a great product, but people just like you. That's what's going to make you a successful rep. So I'm sitting here telling you, if anyone's ever told you, because I used to hear this, go be the hard rep, go make the sales, grind it down, oh, get the money. Don't do that, because you will lose every freaking time. Because guess what? If you have a better product than me, I don't care. I'll still come and take that business, because I'll tell you why. Number one, I believe I have the better product. Number two, I'm going to find out their needs. And number three, I'm just going to get to know them. I'm going to make sure that I'm a resource for them every single time. And that's what you guys have to do. So I really wanted to just talk about relationship building in this module, because you guys need to be able to do that, because that is going to be your success. And like I said, you already have the game plan of how to have conversations, but make sure you remember those. Make sure you're taking notes. The amount of times I would talk to somebody and I walk out of the room, open up the notes app on my phone and type in, hey, this scrub tech has been here for this many years, has this many has 2 kids, blah, blah, blah. So every single time I saw him, hey, her kids' names are A and B. And then I would see him and then I'd be like, hey, wanted to see how A and B is doing. That will go so much farther. And they will actually really appreciate you and know that you're just getting to know them and not just trying to sell a product. That is the best advice I can give you guys. And I can sit here and tell you with all the confidence in the world, if you can just do that and you can focus on getting to know the people that you're working with, you will change your career, you will change your industry, and you'll change your life. And so that's what I'm just going to really want you guys to focus on, is relationship building. But also understand, with all that said, you have to understand who you need to build a relationship with and who's worth building a relationship with. And what I mean by that, some surgeons, best friends, wanted to go grab drinks afterwards. We got to build a relationship. Same thing with scrub techs. And there's some people, it was strictly business. They didn't want to see me. So what I'm saying by that is, there were sometimes I'd walk into the OR and we're talking about life. We're talking about real stuff. And then we help with the surgery. But there's other people who, they didn't want to talk about anything except the surgeon and the patient and what's going on right now in the room. And then even if it was a fast case, we get done, it wasn't any chit chat after, it was in. So again, it's just being a salesperson. It's being able to read people and just build those relationships and be like, hey, this person I can talk like this with, this person I can't. And it goes back to the whole conversation. Just being able to read the room and build that relationship. How to use your resources to navigate the hospital. Now, you heard me say there were times I used to walk around the hospital and I was there for an hour being like, where do I go? And that is the most common thing I hear with people that are brand new, is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. This is the easiest thing I can say to you guys. Number one, make sure that you're not too proud to ask for questions or ask for advice. What I mean by that is, when you get into the hospital, ask where SPD is, ask where the OR room, say, hey, I'm brand new, sorry, right? You need to use that new card. And here's the whole conversation. I used to have this talk with a lot of reps that were in the industry for a while. You can use the new card even when you're 3 years in, because they don't know, unless it's an account that knows you very well. They're getting new nurses, new people all the time. They don't know if you've been there forever. And first off, you'll know if you've been there forever because you'll see those people. But if you're a rep that's brand new, you won't. So the conversation is make sure you're using your resources, because I can sit here and say, when I first started, like I said, I used to go to a hospital an hour before just to try to find it. And I can think of one hospital where it was like you had to go to a certain location just to walk in, but it has 8 different locations to walk in to get into the hospital. You had to go to one, then you had to take a left at the hospital walkway. You had to go through 3 different turns to get to one elevator. There's no other elevators that got you up to there. You would get up, then I'd have to turn right, go down. I'd go through 3 things of double doors, turn left, then turn right to just find where the where the actual account was to actually get into the OR and then to go get my scrubs. Like, it was just the worst. And I remember the first time I was there, it took me an hour just to find that. But I was trying to talk to people, and the worst part is sometimes you're going to talk to nurses. They don't know where the OR is because they're not working in the OR, or they're brand new. So being able to use your resources, but I always just say that you guys need to be able to have those conversations. Ask the front desk right away, hey, I'm brand new. Hey, I've only been at this for a month or 2, or hey, this is one of my first times here. Can you give me some directions to where I'm going? Whether that's SPD, whether that's the OR, whether that's the supply chain. And just understand, majority of people aren't going to know where that is, but you just need to be able to have those conversations. Number 2, being able to talk to reps that have been there. And this is where it's, again, using your resources. I know everyone thinks they needed to talk to only their rep, but what you don't understand is, for example, when I was at Medtronic, Medtronic's a giant company with a lot of different divisions. So I was in the GYN, but then they also had ASI, they had spine, there's so many. And so what I would do is go learn from those reps, and I'd see, hey, this person's the local rep, message them, see if we could get on a call. And then, hey, do you cover this account? Which normally they did. And then you could either meet them, you would meet them at surgeries, or they could help you walk you through. And so what I'm just saying is make sure you guys are using your resources, because those things that I just mentioned to you are things that people never do, and they just try to be too proud and figure it out. And the amount of hours you will waste and the amount of time you could save by just asking those questions or reaching out to other people, it's going to change your life. So that's number one. Number two, being able to go and just have those conversations with important people that are in the staff, OR directors, OR nurses, and being able to say, hey, what should I be doing? What would you guys like to say? Or are there any no-goes that I shouldn't be doing? They're going to give you all of these answers, and it will make your life so much easier. So I really want to make a video just helping you guys navigate the hospitals or accounts that you're in, because it can be very challenging. But make sure you're using resources like the staff that's there, the other reps that you have. And also just make sure that you're always talking with everybody, because you might find the janitor, you might find somebody. Again, just don't think of people that can quote unquote help you. Everybody can help us. So just make sure that everyone's there you're super nice with, and you're just asking to see if you can learn from them. And if you don't know where you're going, just admit you don't know where you're going and try to figure out this process. Take notes. And that's the last thing I'll say is take notes. Even when I told you about that account that it took me forever, I took notes. One time I actually had to record it when I walked in, and I had a video of me walking and finding out the path, because otherwise I couldn't remember where it was. And then the next time I was there, I would just follow the video. Tips that will help make your life a lot easier and not so stressful. So now the part of the course that I know you guys have all been waiting for. Let's start talking about sales. Let's start talking about the sales process. What you're going to do to help turn your territory around and make you go from an associate to a full-line rep, or a first-year rep to a top-performing rep in just a matter of months. And this is the part that I just absolutely love, because I know it's the part that's going to make you guys a better person and a better sales rep. And so we're going to dive really deep in. We're going to go in over the different things of prospecting, how to set up breakfast and lunch, how to actually run a breakfast or lunch, how to be able to get those relationships and being able to leverage those relationships, and making you take, again, your territory from where it's at to being one of the top performing, and having you be one of the top performing reps in the area. So you've done the prospecting, you've done the cold calling, you've done the meeting, which was either a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner. Now you're moving on to the trial. So if you did your job correctly and it went well, now you've set up a trial. And what a trial is again, normally where they're going to try your product, and they're going to trial it for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of cases. Now, a lot of times what does happen is, for example, if there's a competitor or several different competitors, they're going to take a certain amount of time or a certain amount of cases, and they're going to have each surgeon trial it with so many different ones, right? And so what I mean by that is, for example, if it's a new hospital, or a hospital's like, hey, we've been looking at some different options. Is it price that they're looking at? Is it actually what the surgeons have been asking for? You'll have a competitive trial. And so what that usually is going to be, from my experience, it's usually been about 3 weeks, or again, a number of trials. Surgeons will actually go and do several cases with yours, and then they're going to sign off, and then they'll give feedback on what they would like. Now, why this is important is because if you're doing your job correctly, you know the benefits of why they should use your stuff. They should know why they're going to be getting the better outcome. And so you should be able to come in and just do your job really well, and making sure that you're overperforming, because you've already done all the heavy lifting. You've gotten to a point where now they didn't know about you, to now they're actually trialing you in the OR. Now, the conversation I have to say is it's going to be dependent on, for me, I was in split shares. What that means is they had both me and my competitive product on the shelf. So for me, luckily, I could go and do this, and my trials weren't just actually doing one trial at a time where it's getting the whole business. I was just getting the business from that surgeon. So that's why I was able to go pick up, hey, this surgeon does 2 cases a month. This surgeon does 6 cases a month. This surgeon does 10 a month. But I could actually do it because it was all at the same account, and I was just picking off and getting surgeons one-on-one. I didn't have to go and do a whole giant new trial at certain locations. Again, I will speak to that in a second, but so in that case, then it was just making sure that surgeon and that OR room had a great experience. So how I was able to handle that is I would get there early. I'd make sure that the scrub tech who might not have used it before would be able to get it all set up, make sure that it was all prepped, ready to go. Again, if they were already in accounts that I was at, normally it was pretty easy because they probably had used it at some point, but they might tell you, well, this doctor never uses it. And then you'll be like, I know, here I am, right? You have to be able to have those conversations, but you're going to get there early. You're going to make sure that the cases all are set up before the surgeon ever gets there. Then you're going to meet the surgeon out. You're going to go have those scrubbed sync talks. You're going to be able to have that conversation. And then you're going to be able to just have your plan of attack on how you're going to make it go well. And what, again, for me, it was always going to be, I'm going to tell the surgeon kind of what to expect. There's going to be a couple little differences from what the competition usually does. Example was like, for example, I had to talk about where our blade was a little different. We had to do one extra step. We had to be able to show this. Didn't have to do certain other steps that they had to do with the competitor, and just kind of walk it through them and then be like, hey, as we go through this, I'm just going to coach you if that's okay. And they'll be like, yeah, please, like, let me just sure that it's going to go well. And so when you do that, that just gives them the confidence that you know what you're doing and you know that you're an expert. And so then you'll go in there, you'd go do the case. And again, this is what we can always say. Every case is different. You better hope you got an awesome case, but sometimes there's cases, it doesn't matter if they used you, the competitor, or anybody. It was going to be a rough case. And so that's why when you're talking to these doctors and surgeons, you need to ask for at least 3 to 5 cases. Because again, you can't base anything off of one, right? Because for example, you can go drive a car, but you just drive it once. Well, maybe it was just that car that was having a bad day, right? And so you need to be able to ask for several different times. And so once that happens, you'll go, you can have a couple of your cases, or if it was just one case and they're like, this is it, and they love it, majority of the time it would go well. I would be able to coach them. I would do stuff that the other reps wouldn't, aka give them their numbers and they wouldn't have to think about it. And then I would get their feedback. Hey doc, what did you think? I really want you to be open with me. I would love to hear it. And they would either be like, yeah, I absolutely love it. They'll be like, it was fine, or I didn't like it at all, right? And so this is the whole conversation. If they said they don't like it at all, hey, what did you not like about it? So I just have a better understanding, and just be like, hey, would you be open to several other cases, right? Sometimes they'll be like, I'll try 1 or 2 more. A lot of times they'll be like, nope, I'm just going to stick with what I know. But when you got it was okay, again, ask those questions. Hey, what made it okay? What do you feel it could be better, right? Because a lot of times what they feel could be better actually is already there. It's just they've never rode the bike before. So if you've never rode a bike before, you're probably going to fall down a couple times, right? You got to get the training wheels on, you got to get it go, and then eventually you'll be able to take off, right? So you'll be able to like, doc, I totally hear you. And just so you know, that will happen. It just a couple more cases, you'll get more comfortable with A, B, and C, and this will happen. So you just need to be able to ask those questions, see where they're at, and be able to confirm. And then if they say, no, I absolutely love this, this is what I want, then you can actually have them talk and be like, hey, can we update your preference card so they now know to pull this every single time you do this procedure? And again, if they actually truly love it, they'll say yes. So that's for doing a single trial. Now, when you're doing a trial with a big conversion of a hospital, this is where things get a lot more tricky and there's a lot more moving parts, because for the conversation of, you're not just talking to one surgeon. If a hospital is actually doing a conversion, it's a hundreds of thousands of dollars conversion. And they're going to be looking at it not just from what do the surgeons want, they're going to be looking at it from a supply chain. They're going to be looking at a SPD level. There's going to be so many things that they're looking at it for. And they're also going to be looking at what's the back order status? How does your company be able to handle all that stuff? And so that's where it's just, you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting of, if you can be able to get the surgeons to sign on, well, then you need to be going to the OR and director and seeing how they feel. You also got to get the SLP, and sometimes SLP, but what I really meant to say was supply chain. You got to get the supply chain people to be ready to go as well, because supply chain is who's going to be signing the checks. They're going to be the ones who's like, yes, we can do this. And that's where a lot of times you're going to have a whole meeting just with them and a business review going over dollar cost average. You're going to have to be able to see, what is the competitor cost? What do you cost? What's the volumes that you can do? Can you do discounts? And what's going to be the smarter financial business for them? Because for us, that was the nice thing, is we had, and again, what I always believed is I sold a better product that was better clinically, and financially we had cost savings. And so when I could go to the accounts and show them the cost savings that they would get if they used our account or used our products, and then I could get the surgeons on top of it, it was a win-win, right? And then it was able to push. So, but if you're getting in it and now they're like, hey, well, at least look at it all. Normally, like I was stating, is it's going to usually be amount of cases or amount of time, and that you're going to let every surgeon in that group, whether it's 3, 6, 7, be able to use your product. Again, is it 3 cases, 5 cases each? Oh, 3 weeks, whatever it is. And you need to be able to be there for those cases, make sure that they're going well. Because again, you're going to be working with the staff. And this is where we have the conversation of the staff is going to make a big difference in your role. Because if your scrub tech hates your stuff, they're going to complain about it. They're not going to try to put it together right. They're going to be telling you the whole time why it sucks, why the other stuff's better. They're going to be making those conversations and comments during the case. So you need to be able to be in there and be able to defend your business, but you need to make sure that they're having fun, that they're happy, and that they're being able to put it together and feel confident. And that's what your job is, to be that resource, to be confident with them. And so again, you would go in there, you're going to be working with the surgeons, making sure that they're feeling good. And same thing, they'll usually sign in a sheet that they did it. But what you need to find out is, who is the decision maker? What is going to be done? Who is the person who signs off on it? Is it the head surgeon? Does it have to be the majority of the surgeons? Does it have to be all the surgeons? Are they going to be looking at it from just a clinical standpoint? Are they going to be looking at it from a financial standpoint? Are they looking at it for both? What is the key moments that are going to make them choose what they're going to choose and use? Is it going to be about just, I've heard this so many times, we just want the rep that can show up. Like you need to ask these questions and learn what is going to make the difference for them and what is going to make them be the reason that they want to use you. And so again, then those trials will go 3 to 6 weeks. They'll usually also do a dollar cost average. So they're going to have you go meet with supply chain. And this is where you have to really know your numbers. And if you can, you need to be pulling numbers from other places, because like my competitors sometimes did, they like to fib about their prices. For example, what they would always say is they would always say, hey, we use this product, or our blade is this much. But what they actually did was they would use the other blade that was more expensive, but they would quote all the hospitals at the cheapest blade. And then they would have to buy all the blades because they would have them for different procedures. But they would always quote the cheapest blade, but then they actually would always make them pull the most expensive blade. So in actuality, they were spending way more money. And so when we would have to be able to show that and be able to show that proof of it, hey, let's see how many times they actually used this blade. Let's see how many times they used the blade they told you they're using. And you'd actually be able to see that. That would make the big difference a lot of times for us to make those conversions, because if it came down to price, they would see that. And number two, they don't like to be lied to. So it's, again, just being able to have those conversations. And then again, if you can learn about your competitors' pricing through other accounts and difference, you can say, hey, we know at A, B, and C, they're doing this. We were able to get printouts. This is what we can bring to you and show you the proof. And we need you to pull your own numbers. And so that's where you're going to be a real asset. So then after you can get the surgeons on board, you can get the SLP, or sorry, not SLP, the supply chain on board. Then you can actually make it to where you can have those conversions, you can have those conversations. And then you need to go through the process of who are we talking to next? Is it CFO, OR director? Who's the people that are going to make that we need to be signing off? Because when I made several of these conversions and these deals, a lot of times it had to go through 6 different people. And at one time, it sat on somebody's desk for a week. Even though I kept following up, I kept calling, I kept showing up. They were like, oh, sorry, we thought they signed it, but they didn't, right? And so that's where it's just, you're going to have to learn to do your math afterwards. But when it comes to trial, that's what you need to know and expect, because it can be a lengthy process or it can be a quick process. You have to learn where you're at. And this is what's going to help you convert that business, whether it's just a surgeon or it's going to be a whole hospital system. Always be closing. You've heard that a million times, and it's no different than now. But you don't have to always be closing. You only need to close when you need to close. And that's what we're going to go over here is, you did the prospecting, you did the cold calling, you did the meetings, whether it was a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner, and now you went through the trial. Now we need to be able to close the deal. How are we getting it done? How are we getting doctors to continuously use you, or hospital systems to sign your product? This is where we're going to go over of just having those conversations of, you need to be able to know how to handle objections, which we're going to have a whole module after this of the ones that I faced all the time and how to handle those objections. But the number one thing you need to learn on closing is learning who's the decision maker. What are the main points that the decision is going to be made of? Because, for example, they might tell you it's going to be the physicians, but if the supply chain is actually running it and it comes down to cost, they are who matters, right? So you need to find out, who's making that decision, who's the says has the most, what's that process look like, when are they going to get it done by, and then what are the main points that they're looking at. Once you know that, then you know how to get your deal. Because, for example, if you're going after surgeons that, hey, it's the top 3 surgeons, they have to sign off, and the majority of are gonna use it, you know you need to put all your time and effort in making sure that they have a great experience and that it's going well. And again, no matter what, you should be doing that, but again, it's gonna make more if that's where all the weight is compared to if they tell you, "No, supply chain and how much money this costs is gonna be the biggest obstacle, and that's what we need to know." If that is the lowest price, we'll take it. That's where, for me, I was always happy because we're always going to be the lowest price, but that doesn't mean that the competitor is not gonna lie about things. It doesn't mean that the competitor is not gonna try to put some fast ones over them. That means I need to be making that relationship with that supply chain coordinator very strong, continuing to communicate with them on an open basis, being able to give them more information when they need it. So again, this is where the always be closing conversation comes in, is you need to be able to find out who the person is that's gonna make the decision, and then what are the points. So for example, when I was working with my surgeons and I was just getting them to close, I just needed to worry about them. I just needed to give them a really good experience. And then from our conversations, I would learn, what are you looking for? Is it the speed of the OR? Is it speed of the setup time? Is it speed of the procedure? Is it, for me, it was like, are you looking for visualization? That was one of their big things. They wanted to be able to get throughout the whole cavity. I'm learning what was make it. So was it clinical? Was it financial? Was it just the time in the OR? Was it the ease of use? I literally had people tell me, oh, I didn't want to use something because it was too loud. Right? You need to have those questions and asking these doctors and surgeons and people questions to find out what's the most important, because this is what you guys need to understand. All day you could talk about, let's talk about you're the most affordable price. And this is what's happened with me where I was at. I could talk about price all day long. And then I would find out, Jacob, I don't make my recommendations off of price. I do what's best for the patient. Guess what? Everything I just told them about price, how we're the lowest options, that we are much more affordable, we save them, they didn't hear a thing. And they actually just think I'm just a salesperson just trying to sell them. Compared to if I would have been like, what's most important to you? And they would have been like, oh, I want to make sure that my patients are getting the best care with clinical value. Then I don't need to talk about price. I could just at the end, what I would do is I'd be like, we have this A, B, and C for the clinical, and they'd be like, oh, we also have this that could help. Oh, great. And then, oh, and just by the way, just so you know, it's also a little more affordable at this price. And majority of the time, people would be like, oh, that doesn't matter to me. I don't even care about it. Hospital pays for it anyway. But you need to know, because then other ones would be like, oh, that's great to know. That's a big point for me. And they write it down. So you just need to be able to understand who you're talking to and what those points are. And then if it was just my surgeon, like I said, after I'd do those trials, I'd learn the questions, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy. And then if they wanted to continue to move forward, I would say, hey, can we get this updated on your preference card? And then I'll continue to work with your surgery scheduler. And they'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. Right. And then you email the surgery scheduler and then you have the surgeon communicate. That is how you would make that close, because you need to be able to communicate with stuff, because when sometimes surgeons will, they don't want to be passive aggressive. It depends on OBGYNs or where you're at and what division you're going into. Like my OBGYNs would always be like super sweet people, but they didn't want to be confrontational usually. So they would say, yeah, this is great, I want to use it. And then they try to ghost me because in the moment they didn't want to say, no, I didn't like it. Compared to certain specialties I've heard of, certain ones in ortho, they will tell you extremely how they feel and right to your face, and they don't care if it hurts your feelings, right? So you just have to know what specialty you're working with. But you need to ask, do they have any reservations? And again, you're not going to say, do you have any reservations? You're going to say, hey, just wanted to see, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to use us? Right? And then they will tell you, no, I think it's great. Or, yeah, actually, at this point of the surgery or something here. And then you're going to be able to address those. And then again, it's either getting more surgeries on the books or getting them to go update their preference card. Then you close that deal. If it is going to the hospital, we will go talking about the creating the urgency and doing all this other stuff with the deal flow. But when it comes into closing deals with actually doing conversions, it's actually just making sure you show up. You find out who's the decision makers in that process that we talked about earlier. What's their timeline? What are the key objectives they're making their decisions on? And what everything that you need to know to be able to help them make that decision. That's where you need to really make sure that you're able to go, and you need to have open communication with everybody, because again, when you're doing these big trials, it's not just one person. You're working with several different people. It's going to be the OR director. It's going to be supply chain. It could be with somebody in nursing. It could be the GYN coordinator or whatever coordinator in the division you're in. And there's going to be all those different point of contacts that all need to be communicating. And it's your job to facilitate all that communication. So That's going to be how you close those deals, and you go from all the way from prospecting all the way to closing. And we will go into more about obstacles I faced, how to create those needs in the next modules. We're going to talk obstacles. Now, this is a common thing that happens in medical device sales, and it's the one thing that's promised to happen. When you're doing obstacles, and we're talking about obstacles, it doesn't matter if you tell somebody something, they're going to have some objection, and they're going to be like, no, I don't think that's right. And the reason I'm telling you that is a lot of people will throw objections at you, and they're not even real objections. They're just trying to put stuff in play. And so, for example, they'll be like, oh, I don't have time, or I've never used this before, or I like this other product. But most people and most good reps will not just take that as an answer. The bad reps say, oh, okay, sounds good. The good reps are going to ask open-ended questions, and then they're going to ask why. And I always joke around, if you think about like a little 2-year-old or 3-year-old, parents will always get mad at them because they just ask why about everything. Why? 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 That's how you want to be, and not an annoying way. But for example, if I talk to a doctor and they're like, oh, I don't want to use your stuff because I've always used that. Oh, how long is always? 14 years. Oh, great. So did you use it at residency? Yes. All right. So you notice I just did a close into this, then you're screwed. But if you'd be like, oh, so I take it that you did it at residency, would you be using that if you didn't use it at residency? And then you would be able to start having those conversations, and you want to be able to make those conversations flow, but you want to get to know that person. So again, yes, you're going to have open-ended conversation. Yes, there's going to be some yes and no's in there every once in a while, but you want to be able to ask questions that's going to get them flowing. You want to get them to be able to talk to you. So for example, sometimes they would tell me, oh, it's just about price. Oh, what about price? Right? Oh, it's got to be under this much money and it goes here. And you'll be like, oh, so nothing about how the product performs, the visualization, or the time it can save matters. Right? And you can be able to have those conversations and learn. But I want to just tell you guys, it's just objection handling. You had to do it just to get the job, right? We talk about everybody's going to have objections why you shouldn't be somewhere. It's going to be the same when you're in the course and when you're actually out doing the day-to-day. Everyone's going to have objections. When you try to go set a meeting, when you go trying to talk to somebody, you go through an email, there's objections coming in. And then when you're going to talk to a surgeon, they all have objections, but you just need to find which ones are fake and which ones are real. Because some people will just throw fake objections in there. Oh, I don't have time, or I've used this for this many years, or all. Those are just them saying things so they don't want to talk to you. But if you actually are good at your job and you're asking really good educated questions and you've done your research, you'll be able to have a conversation that when they say that, you'll be able to take that conversation and lead it into, tell me more about your experience when you first used these. And then they're going to tell you about it. And then, oh, did you ever have these kind of experiences that I've heard from other people where it was blah, 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 blah? And then they would be like, yes or no, but then you can be like, oh, if they say yes, be like, oh, tell me about that. And then you can have them expand on it, right? And so it's just being able to handle those objections and being able to handle that they're going to give you, that they're coming. But the difference between a good rep and a bad rep, and it is a bad rep is just going to get an objection and say, okay. But a good rep is going to say, tell me more. I'd love to learn about that experience. Oh, tell me why you don't like it, right? That happens. Oh, I don't like it. Oh, can you tell me why? Oh, I don't like how it does this and this and this and this. And then again, you're handling those objections. And then guess what? You might find out it actually had nothing to do with those things. It had to do with something other that they didn't even state. But that was just their easy objections and easy things that they could throw at you. And so it's again being able to walk you through those steps of learning. What's the real pain point? What are they looking to do? And we're going to talk about that and creating the need and how you're going to close that business once you create the need. But you just need to be able to know that you're going to have objections that come up. Now, I want to talk about also obstacles that you could face. So when I was a rep, not only was the obstacles of, doing my day-to-day of just running my own territory, but I also had things that came up such as back orders, staffing, hospital budgets, company rules. And those are some that I put in the downloadable PDF that you'll be able to look at because, for example, when I was a rep last year, I was in COVID-19. We didn't have anything. I had hundreds of thousands of dollars that didn't ship. I didn't get paid on, but take me out of it. Take it to the accounts not getting what they need. And now the surgeries that I'm supposed to be doing aren't happening. Or the surgeons aren't being able to do the best actual procedures because they don't have the product. So for example, we had 4 different blades. There were certain times we had to use blades that weren't ideal for the procedures because we were all out of the other blades. There were certain times that we had to send accounts more blades, and the other accounts that had them didn't get as many blades because it was just a hierarchy and we had to do what we needed to do. So what you need to understand is that is something that I know people are still facing. So back orders are something that could come up that could be an obstacle for you and how you're going to run your territory. But that's a common question I get asked is how you handle those back orders. You just handle it the best you can because it's all new. But for example, you need to over communicate. You need to be like, hey, I just need to let you know we're going through this. This is the conversation. The one thing I would always say, me personally, and again, just take this with a grain of salt, was when I had these conversations, I made sure that they knew I was on the same playing field as them. Because guess what? When you go tell an account that they're not getting the stuff they paid for, they're not going to be happy about it. And you can be like, I'm just not as happy either. Just so you know, you're the 14th account I've had to tell today. And oh my gosh. And they'll be like, because when I would start sympathizing with them and telling them how it's affecting me, they'd be like, oh, Jacob, I'm so sorry. Like, no, don't worry about my stuff. I totally understand. It's just the way of the world. But if I didn't, they were just going to sit there, yell at me, complain, and be like, oh my God, we need our stuff. We'll just use your competitors, right? And so you just need to be able to handle those objections, those obstacles that come up. But that was something that was very common, and just I over communicated with everybody. I worked with my team. I tried to get everybody that I could to be able to help us all out. And then, for example, if certain ones didn't go, I just communicated with the surgeons. I had them understand what we were going through. And then I would also be like, hey, doc, I know we usually use this, but because of what we're going through right now, we have to use this. Let me just warn you and tell you that it's not going to be the same, but it's the best we can do right now. And just again, over communicate, be able to work with them. When it goes into staffing, the thing you have to understand is staffing is going to be changing at all times. Like when I left the OR and still going on now, travel nurses are who pretty much runs the OR now. There are always people going into a new location every 10 to 12 weeks. And so who you've done the in-service for 3 months ago, they don't know it now because there's a whole new staff. So that can be something that can be challenging. Number 2, just learning the staff you're working with. We talked about the scrub techs, the nurses, the OR people, the SLP or SPD who you're working with is going to make a big difference in your life, but you don't get to pick them. You just get to work with them. So just understand that those are obstacles because I've dealt with people, I've dealt with OR directors that suck at their job. They don't do anything, that they just sit on a computer in their office on Facebook. I've walked in on them where they won't return my emails and they're sitting on Facebook all day, and then that they're just telling me every excuse and they haven't even done their job. And that's where I can just tell you guys, it can be frustrating as heck when that happens, but you can't pick the people you're working with when it comes to those hospitals. You have to just be able to just handle those objections. You have to be able to handle that problem and be able to work around it. And again, because if you always say, well, this person didn't do their job, this person, is that going to be the reason why you didn't hit quota? Is that the reason you're not successful? And if you say yes, then you're a loser and you lose at all things because nobody's going to be the reason you're not successful besides you. It goes back to that original comment I made. There's going to be a storm and you're going to be in that rowboat and it's going to push you back. But if you know where you're going, you're going to keep on rowing. If you don't, you're just going to get hit by the waves and complain and say, oh, here we go, right? So you need to make sure that you're owning every single piece of it. When we're talking about hospital budgets, this is the frustrating thing that they're going to tell you, oh, Jake, we want to buy it, but we just don't have the budget for it. Let me just first off tell you, majority of the time, that's a lie because I've watched they didn't have a budget for it and then they bought a $500,000 product that they needed the next week. So you just have to be able to find out what's the need, what is their basis, what are they trying to buy, and being able to learn. So the one tip I'll give you is a lot of time it has to go to capital if it's over $5,000 at a hospital. So for example, there was times I sold $20,000 worth of product, but I had to make 4 different quotes, 5 different quotes, and put it under 5 grand. So for example, it'd be 5 different quotes that would all just be $4,999, or I'd do 4,500, right? Be able to split it up and do it against 5, 6 different quotes, and then they can get it through right away compared to if I went 20,000, well, that's got to go to capital. That's got to get allocated. That's got to get reviewed. That's got to go through a process to actually get purchased. Compared to, I once had that happen, was able to give them, it was a $30,000 PO. I broke it up into a bunch of different quotes. I had that paid the next week. So you just got to be able to get creative with it and learn about the different ways because again, hospitals do have budgets, but I can also sit here and tell you hospitals save budgets. So if they need something tomorrow, they have something that comes up and they need to get it, they do have it. And then you also have companies. So again, I tell you guys, I hope you love your company and I know where you're at, but every company has rules. Every company has things you have to do. For example, I made the comment, the amount of times I would be like, oh, you have to do this mandatory training. Oh, you have to do this meeting. Oh, you have to do this stuff. Well, first off, I learned 90% of the meetings that go on are bull crap. They're trash. They don't help you at all. So that was something that I would get on, but I wouldn't even listen to half the time because they didn't even talk about anything that actually helped me as a rep. And again, any questions I had, I'll just ask my manager if I had it about that stuff because it was a waste of my time. I'd be in ORs trying to be on my headphones and they're just not talking about anything that's actually going anywhere. And so that's one thing that I would say is there was company rules. Yes, you got to be on these meetings. There's also times they would want us to do these trainings. And there was several conversations. Several times I had to say to my manager, do you want me to get this training to be done and it's wiped away? Or do you want me to close this $50,000+ deal? It's your choice because I can't do both. I can either do the deal and make money for our company and help our revenue, or I can do this little training that I don't pay attention about. It's just a check the box thing, but you guys said it's mandatory. And so, of course, she always chose to have me go close the deals, which I did. But that was something that I always remember having big conversations about is like, they just because you'll get on your calendar, oh, here's another meeting. Oh, here's another meeting. Oh, here's a training you have to do. Oh, here's something that's mandatory that you need to have done while you're still trying to run stuff. And it becomes a lot. And so you just have to start understanding that those are objections and obstacles that you're going to be facing. But it's just how you handle them, right? You can be frustrated, you can be mad about it, but you have to be able to handle it like an adult and be able to just get it done. But sometimes you will have to have those real conversations. And so I always just make sure to say that because if you're not having those real conversations, I bet you're probably not doing what you need to do at all times. And then the last thing, again, I just want to make sure you guys know that you're going to get objections, you're going to get obstacles, but remember, you are the reason you are successful. And the reason I have that is because you should be reaching out to other reps. You should be reaching out to other people, continuing to learn from their experiences. Because guess what? Somebody's probably got the same obstacle, the same objection, and that's how you're going to help yourself stand out and help yourself go to the next level is by just continuing to grow and learn from as many people as possible. Creating the need. Now, I've talked about this several times, but we want to talk about how are you actually going to create that urgency to get these deals done? And this is what helped turn my whole territory around. And so I want to give you guys this nugget, this huge skill that's going to change your entire life, because what I'm about to teach you guys and what I'm about to tell you guys is you have to go create the need that nobody knows they need. They don't know about what's going on. They don't know that there's actually a need that's happening. And you actually have to go create these scenarios to get people in the actual room together. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I'm going to share a quick story. And this story hopefully will be able to explain everything I'm talking about when creating the need. So I was working with one of my top surgeons, and my top surgeon went between two facilities, but these facilities were sister facilities. So again, there was a surgery center and then there was the actual hospital. And so what had happened was the majority of my surgeries that were being done were done at the surgery center. So they had their own stuff, but my surgeon would go to the actual hospital sometimes and do surgeries over there. The problem at the surgery center and the hospital was the surgery center owned majority of the new stuff. We had some old scopes that they had. And so when there was actual surgeries, they wouldn't be taking over the new stuff from the surgery center to the hospital. So my doctor would have to use the old scopes at the hospital. She would get very frustrated. She'd get very mad. She'd be like, these procedures are going horrible. And so we would talk about, hey, we need to get them to actually use the new stuff. We need to get them to purchase it. And so what happened was that brought me talking to the OR director and the GYN coordinator. They would budget for it. That got me talking to who was in charge of financing. And then we started having conversations. Well, what happened was they were like, well, we're just going to borrow from the surgery center. So again, playing the long game, I said, okay, that sounds great. We'll make sure that it happens. As you can imagine, it never happened, or they had other cases because my top surgeon wasn't the only surgeon I had at that surgery center. And so they would be using my other stuff and they'd be using my scope. So they couldn't actually pull from it, number one, sometimes, or number two, they said they would go grab it, but they never did. And who was the one who ended up going to grab it every single time? Me. It was me running, making sure I had to get there early, but oh my gosh, oh, you guys set up the wrong stuff. Well, this is what they brought us, is what the scrub techs would say, and there'd be all attitude. And I'm like, Well, they're supposed to be on the card that there's supposed to be new ones. No worries, I'll go grab it. And then I'm running, literally running through the hospital and the surgery centers, grabbing the stuff. Then the surgery center's like, well, did you get the okay from the hospital? I said, yeah, is it okay to take it? And they would be like, well, let me see. And they'd have to make sure they didn't have anything going on. So every single time that happened, I was calling the person who told me we're just going to borrow, and his name, we'll say his name was Jerry. And I would be like, hey, Jerry, I just want you to know you said that you guys would be pulling this and it's not happening. I'm currently running over and I pray to God that they have sterile stuff because my surgeon's asking for this, requesting it for the case. And you told me that you guys would get it and it's not happening. And after about the 7th time, I left him a voicemail. I let him know that this was going on, but I have to make the side note. My surgeon knew nothing. She never knew any of this ever happened. I always saw her after all this chaos. I'd be like, hey, how's it going? She never knew I was running from the surgery center and the hospitals to go grab stuff and get it to go. And then I was able to get it all set up, and then she would come in and do the case, and then we'd have to worry about it getting over. What happened a lot of times is the hospital would lose something or they want to get it turned over. Then the next day, the surgery center didn't have what they had. And so when that would happen, then I would call Jerry again. Hey, Jerry, hope you know that the hospital didn't turn the stuff over. We don't have it now at the surgery center. This is becoming a real big problem, right? And then I would actually go to the surgery center director who was having problems and was not happy with that. She would then go talk to Jerry and let him know what was going on. And then there was one day, this had gone on, just to let you guys know, for about 6 weeks, 2 months. This had gone on. It happened about 7, 8 times. It kept happening. And then there's finally a moment that I'm sprinting across because it happened again. They already knew about it. They said that they would go. I literally called the hospitals the day before to let them know the cases, to make sure to have the surgery center get it all sent over. They didn't do it. And there was one day I literally called and I said, Jerry, this is it. This is my last conversation. You guys have not been able to do it. I'm running over and I pray to God that they have something that's sterile. But until I get over there, I won't know. And I'm telling you, this is it. You and I are having a meeting this week. You need to call me back because my surgeon is very upset right now that she can't even get the equipment that you promised that you would be an easy fix, and it's clearly not. As you can hear, I put a little emphasis on there saying, hey, this is how it's going down. I'm done. I gave you your opportunity to do the shot, not spend any money, but you and your staff can't follow through. And so then I said that. I had a meeting the very next week with the surgery center director, the hospital surgery or the hospital director for OR, the OR director, and then I had it with Jerry. And we sat down and we said, we know this surgeon is the highest volume surgeon in this area for this. This is what we currently had at the surgery center. This is what we have at the hospital. This is what they need at the hospital and the surgery center. And because of that, I did over a $45,000 deal. And we were able to close that deal because I was able to go create the need and say, hey, do you know what's going on? Hey, go in here. And I was talking to all the different people, letting them know what was going on. But I would just tell my surgeon, hey, we really need the new stuff because you like it. You should request for that. You should ask for that. And my surgeon would actually start asking for it. But she never was pushing. She was never being very aggressive towards it. But I, in the background, was doing all this work, getting everybody to be aware of it. And then with the people that I found out were the decision makers, I put all the pressure on. I made sure to be like, you need to know this. You said this. You promised this, and you're not holding up your end. This is it. I can't keep doing this because it's been too much. You failed 0 for 7. This is clearly not working. And what that led to is having a meeting with everybody. I came to that meeting fully prepared, had quotes already ready to go. I had it all priced out, and I was able to say when we would need stuff by, I would be able to do trade-ins, I would be able to get discounts, and I was able to close that deal, get it done. And that was a big deal. That was able to then get us all the new stuff at that hospital. And again, that was one of many deals that I was able to do, creating the need. So I hope what you've heard during that story is you need to go find out who the decision makers are. You need to find out what the process looks like. And you, at first, what I gave them was the opportunity to prove it. And again, following up with email. Hey, Jerry, it was great speaking with you today. Like discussed, we will give you said that you will be able to transfer this over and you will have this all set up for the cases. Bam. And then every time it didn't, email, phone call, voicemail, letting them know. And so then they could never say to me, it's not happening, Jacob's lying. I had documented proof to show what was going on. And then I would let the OR director know. I let the hospital director know. I let Jerry know. I let everybody know that needed to know at those times. And then eventually the one day I was just like, I'm done. This deal is getting done this week, right? Because I had enough evidence to back it up. And again, it wasn't because I, the rep, wanted it done. It was because my surgeon, who was the highest volume doctor at that place, was asking for it and requesting for it. And they knew that, and she had the power. And again, because she was able to just request it, I was able to do all the legwork in the background to be able to get it done. But during that time, not once did my surgeon ever know about all the chaos that actually went on. She didn't know about me sprinting through the hall, dripping sweat while I'm trying to get things done. So again, when you are going to create that need, you're going to create the urgency. What you heard in that story is you're going to go find out, who do you need to talk to? Who is the decision makers? What is going on? And how are you going to go to create that need and make it happen? Another quick story that I can tell you that's, again, going to do this is, we were at another location in another hospital, and they had a bunch of old scopes. Again, being able to go in, seeing what the doctors were using with the old scopes, what I would do is then I would go have a lunch with those doctors, or in the OR, I would actually bring in my cart and be able to show them our new scopes that we had and be like, look what's better. And then I would be able to show them video of what it was looking like with it. And they'd be like, that's so much better. I want to try that. Great. I would come in and do a trial with our new scope so they got to use it. And they would be like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. I want this. And then I'd have the doctors start going to the OR directors. I would have them go into supply chain, SPD, everybody telling them, I want this because this gives me the best possible outcome for my patients. And then I let them do the heavy lifting. But again, if I would have never said nothing, they would have not known that we had better scopes that gave them a better opportunity. And then that was able to turn into a $25,000 deal of just being able to let people know, hey, these are the new things we have that are much better, and we'll give you a better outcome with everything that we're looking for. And to be honest, guys, that came from SPD. That's a $25,000 PO cut for SPD that we did a trade in on scopes. And the reason I'm stating that to you is my manager, when I told her that and we cut that deal, she's like, I've never heard of somebody getting SPD budget and closing the deal with SPD. So that's where I'm telling you guys, you're creating the need and you're talking with everybody and learning, because by me doing that, I had done an in-service, talked to the SPD coordinator. He had told me, hey, I had a couple surgeons ask for these. We have budget. It won't be available for another 2 months. I need you to set a meeting for me in 2 months. Send me an email, follow up, and we will buy this in May. Great. I did that exact same thing. Put an email, said, hey, great speaking with you. Like you said, I will follow up in May. I put a reminder in my calendar to follow up in May. Came May. Bam, bam, bam. He kept his word. I met with him one more time. He's like, how many do I need? Give me the quotes. Bam, had the PL. So again, when I'm talking to you guys about creating this need, it's you have to go find out, what is the problem? What are you trying to solve? Which is AKA could be solving and selling your product. But what's going on and how can you make that difference? So when it comes to creating the need, creating the urgency, it always comes down to who's your decision makers, who's going to have the biggest impact on that, and then what do you need to do in the background to make it happen. Now, the one thing I have to state is you can do this, but you have to do it the right way, because if you get too aggressive, your deal's done. If you get too pushy, the deal's done. If you're trying to do all the work and you don't have people that are backing it, it's not going to get done. You need to find out who has the voice, who's going to make the decisions, and who can help you and push for you, and then you can do the work where you need to. But at the end of the day, you can't do it all by yourself. You're going to have a lot of different people helping you. And the last thing I want you guys to hear out of all these stories is it wasn't I just talked to one person. I was talking to a lot of people throughout the hospital, and I always called it the spider web. There's a spider web, it all branches in. How do you have it to where it connects the webs everywhere and it's all intertwined, and you're the person that it just keeps coming back to get those deals done? Getting promoted. Now, what we talked about, if you're an associate sales rep and you're like, hey, I want to go from an associate to a full line rep in under 12 months or faster than 2 years, right? This is this module that's going to tell you how to do that. It's going to help you find those numbers that you need. But also, if you're a full line rep and you're like, hey, I want to crush my numbers so I can leverage that to maybe go to a different company or maybe go into a different role with my company, that's what this is going to be about too. So we're going to dive deep in how to get you promoted. Creating the resume to get you promoted. Now, this is where it's going to make a big difference for you guys of knowing your numbers, knowing the growth that you brought to your territory, your company, your business. And so for associates, the most common thing I hear is, what do you mean, Jacob? I've been just covering cases. I don't know what I'm doing. What do you mean numbers? Well, here's the conversation you have to have. Since you joined, how much business have you done? How much business have you been able to grow by? For example, what was the business doing per month when you started? And 3, 6, 9 months later, how much has it been doing now? Because what you could actually show is, for example, say it was doing 100 grand and then you joined and 6 months later, it's doing 150 grand. Well, you've now done 150%, right? And you've grown it, right? You can show that, or you've grown it 52%, right? And you can show these numbers and be like, we've done this over this amount of time. You just need to be able to have these numbers. Couple things. How are you going to find those numbers? Talking to your reps, talking to the people you're working for, but also tracking with yourself. You could track how many cases you're doing when you first started to how many cases 6 months, 8 months later to be able to talk to that. You could be able to talk how much you've grown it within an account. For example, while you're doing your job, maybe you're upselling other products and you can show, I've done this. I've been able to grow it this much over the last 3 to 6, 9, 12 months. You need to be able to show these numbers and what you're doing during the process. But why this is valuable is before you're starting the process, you now know this and you know you can start taking those numbers. If you're already in the process and you're like, oh, I've been doing this for 9 months, right? Go back, kind of look at stuff, ask questions, and start tracking it now so you can be able to show the growth that you've been able to help bring. That's number one. Number two is, are you doing the job that you're trying to get? So for example, we talked about this all the time. When I didn't have sales experience, you got to do the job to get the job. So if you're an associate and you want to be a full line rep, you need to do the job to get the job, right? Everybody tries to do the bare minimum. No, not us. That's not how you get jobs, and it's not how you go from an associate to a full line rep in under a year. You have to be doing the job. Are you running business meetings? Are you setting up lunches? Are you converting doctors? Are you converting business? Are you getting to be able to grow the business by yourself? Number one thing I'll say is, yes, you need to be able to talk to your TMs. Yes, you need to be able to make sure you're doing what they're asking. But for example, you can ask, hey, can I come with you to run some lunches? Hey, do you think I could go run a lunch by myself? Most of the time, they're always going to be like, yeah, that would be great. I would love for you to do that. As long as you're taking care of the business we have you hired to do. But if you have an off day or a couple, 2 to 3 days off, please go run the trays that you need to or pick up the trays that you need to and go cold call. Show that you did some cold calling. Talk about how many accounts you cold called. Talk about the conversion rate, or talk about how many meetings you were able to set, how many meetings you were able to convert, how many doctors you were actually able to win. That goes such a far way because that's what you're going to be doing in the job as a full line rep. You need to be able to have those conversations of, this is what I did. Can you do conducting business meetings? If you can talk about that and how you're able to conduct meetings and save money or convert business and win conversions and trials, that's going to go a far way as well. So being able to know those numbers on how you're going to be able to separate yourself is going to make a big, big difference on what you're doing. And then again, just going about, what is that job? What are you trying to do as a full line rep? We're doing business meetings. We're doing conversions. We're doing prospecting. We're doing lunches. We're doing the trials. We're doing business reviews. We're having to talk with our managers and going through prospecting and forecasting what the next month or what the next quarter is going to bring, right? You have to do all that. So if you can show on your resume and through the proof that you're doing that, that's going to make a big difference. And that's what's going to actually help elevate you. That's number one with the part of just your resume. But number two is, are you networking still? Because you guys think maybe it's just in your division, but if you're doing the right thing and you're networking in the division and doing all the right stuff, guess what? There might not be a position in your state or your current location, but guess what? Next state over, the next territory, or if you're on the West Coast and over in the East Coast, it's in your same division. They might be looking for somebody. And if you've just been crushing it in your job, again, going back to being an expert, and then you have those numbers that you can show, now there's no reason why you shouldn't be a winner in that. Because guess what? You can show the growth you've done. You can show the experience that you have. You already know the product. You already know the system, the company. And then you can go and just take that into another territory, right? That's how you go make a difference. Now, if you're sitting here saying, Jake, that's great, but I'm not an associate. I'm a full line rep. I want to go. It goes back to the same thing. What have you been able to do over the last 6 to 12 months? What are the numbers you've grown? How much business have you actually won? What was the conversion, or what was the territory running at when you took over, and what's the territory at now? How have you been able to grow that? What is the biggest conversion you've done, right? You need to be able to put these all onto numbers and have statistics, or able to have actual factual numbers that they can actually see. You need to be able to talk about what was the market share when you took over? What's the market share when you left? Right? You need to be able to talk about you were able to do A, B, C, and D, because again, going back to what are you going for? Are you going for a new position at a different company? Because what are they going to be looking in their reps? A lot of times it's going to be the exact same thing, but there could be certain things that they're looking for that you might not be doing at your current role that they would need to see. And you just need to be able to understand that and build your resume accordingly. Also, if you're trying to go up to management, you need to understand why. What are you needing to do as manager? And again, the big one will always be leadership. Okay, what have you done? Do you have reps working under you? Do you have associates working under you? Have they had success underneath you? Have you been able to open communicate? What's their brag book look like? How many people have said you're awesome at what you do? What's your territory running at? What is your communication skills like, right? You need to be able to show all this stuff wherever you're going. So again, no matter whether it's being an associate and you're wanting to grow, or if you're a full line rep and you're wanting to grow into a management position with your company or go to a different company, it's all about the numbers and being able to show the growth and being able to show that you are a valuable asset and you're already doing the job that they're looking for. Because if you can do that and then you come more prepared than every single person, there's no reason that you shouldn't win the job. And that's why I can sit here and tell you, I have a position that I shouldn't have, because I came more prepared and I was able to show through my work and through the hard times that I was able to perform each and every time and have those hard numbers to show that why I would be a successful rep, manager, and wherever I go after this. One thing I want to mention about when talking about percentages and putting them on your resume, sometimes you're going to have to play with the numbers. Sometimes you're not going to know all of them and you might have to round, you might have to make some averages. Let me just be very clear. We are not going to lie. We are not going to just make fake stuff up. But in the same respect, you might not know the whole truth. Because the reason I'm saying that is, in these interviews, do you think everybody tells the truth? No. Do you think people are actually making what they say they're making? No, because that's what they're trying to go make now at the new company. You guys have to be able to understand, hey, sometimes I'm going to have to maybe mix some numbers because I can't remember exactly, but you need to be able to know those numbers and be very confident with those numbers. So when they ask you, oh, this is real, how did you get this? A, B, and C, you have the answer. You need to know if they're asking for a certain base. So for example, I can sit here and tell you from experience. I told you guys, at Plan, I was making 135. When I went to my new role and they talked about it, my base is much higher now. And they asked what my base was. I told them what my base was. Did I really? No. I told them what I wanted my base to be. And they're like, that's what you make? And I said, yep, 100% confidence, bam. Who do you think got that base they were looking for? Bam. That's the difference. That's the power of being confident and knowing what you're going for and having just the strength and actually the confidence to be able to pull it off of being like, yes, this is what I'm worth. This is where I'm at. Same thing for the numbers. Oh, you did A, B, and C? Yes, I did. And this is how I actually did it, A, B, and C, right? Being able to show those differences. And what I'll just say, especially from associates, because if you're a full line rep, you should have numbers to be able to play with. And if you don't, that's the problem. You need to find out those numbers. You need to know the growth that you did. You need to know how much you converted. You need to know the territory, what you did when you took over and where you're going, and being able to show the growth over growth on all different aspects of your business. But if you're an associate, just understand, how many cases did you do? You might have to make that a percentage. Let's talk about how many lunches you were able to grow. Maybe that's percentage. Maybe they gave you a product that was like, hey, we have a pretty big bag. You're responsible for this product. What can you do with it? Maybe you grew that business, right? A lot of times accounts will give you that, or a manager will give you that. Hey, we're going to give you this one product. You're going to take care of the business, but on the side, you can go hustle and see if you can get some business with that. If you can do that, I would do all the work you need to, but then every waking moment I would be going to try to sell that product to be like, hey, I actually took this from 0% to 222% over the last 2 years, right? Or over the last 6 months or 8 months, I was able to gain this much business. Again, and one thing I want to talk about, let's say you get a doctor and they did $5,000 a month in that. Well, over the year, they're going to do around $60,000. That's where you can say generated $60,000 of new revenue, right? Because you're going to make it annualized. Now, let's say you get 5 of them, right? Generated $300,000 of new business, right? So that's where you just need to be able to play with these numbers and go with them and know why you are saying what you're saying and have these numbers and be able to put them together. But I needed to talk about this point because the most common thing I hear is, oh, Jake, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to put. You just need to find out where you're going and what that is entailing, and then being able to find the numbers that are going to fit what they're looking for and are good talking points. But again, in medical device sales, what they are obsessed with is growth. Are you doing the job to get the job? And how much have you crushed it over the last 3, 6, 12 months, 24 months, wherever you're at in your position? And why should somebody else take a shot on you? The next part I have to talk about, if you want to get a promotion, especially if you're an associate, but it also goes into being your full line rep. This is what I did. It is going above and beyond. And I know what you guys are thinking. Jake, I already know that. Like, that's what I'm going to do. But you say that, but most people don't ever do it. They do the bare minimum. They're like, oh, associates only run trays. Associates only do this. Oh, a full line rep, I'm just trying to do that. The difference between me and everybody else was I was able to finish at above 140%. Everyone else did 100 if they were lucky, right? I just showed that I crushed it in every aspect. People saw me on different terms of like, oh, wow, Jacob's doing this. Oh, Jacob's doing that. Oh, he took the lowest performing territory, did this. You guys need to be able to show that you're going above and beyond. You need to communicate, hey, I was able to win this business when you're talking to your manager. Hey, we were able to get this big win of the day or the win of the week. You need to be able to let people know, and you need to be able to show that you're making a difference. And so I always say that is going above and beyond, especially as an associate. It means you don't need your hand held. Even as a full line rep, no manager wants to hold somebody's hand. No territory manager, no rep wants to hold their associate's hand. They want you to be able to go and do it all by yourself. If they tell you once, you should know it by then, right? What I mean by that is you shouldn't be told 14 times how to do something. If that happens, they'll probably look to try to just fire you because it means that you're not taking accountability and you're not learning what you need to do. If I messed up, I took notes about it so I didn't mess up again, right? And so it's okay to mess up. It's all right not to know everything. But for example, if you do the same thing over the next 3 months and you keep messing up or you don't ever remember what they told you, it's not showing that you're a real learner. You're not going and spending the extra time because if you don't understand it, maybe you need to take another 2 hours every night to go listen to it or learn that, right? It shows that you're going above and beyond and that you're going to go make the difference. So when you talk about running trays, are you running trays? Because a lot of times you'll see the schedule and Surgery Scheduler. What about if you ran the trays before they even asked you, right? Because this is going back to a territory manager. The last thing they want to do is micromanage and have to talk to their associates and be like, hey, did you run these trays? Hey, make sure we have this case. And you can, the best part is when you can say, hey, just so you know, I already ran it. And you text them first and be like, hey, I know it's Tuesday. Wanted to let you know I got everything dropped off for Thursday, Friday. Got this all set up. Anything else you would like me to do? Bam, you now have that text message or email form. They are now being like, wow, I didn't have to even tell them they're go-getters and be like, hey, that's perfect. No, sounds great. Go do this, right? And what either happens is they're like, hey, take some time off. No, just go cover these cases, or they're going to find more work for you to do, right? And if that happens, it's all wins because if they're finding more work, you're now probably going to learn more of what they're doing. And then if they say, no, take some time off, this is what you guys need to understand. That time off is not for you to go take time off. That time is for you now. You can go work on trying to schedule meetings. You can try to learn how to do lunches. Can I come shadow you? And again, this is what I got to talk about. If the rep that you're underneath is not a real go-getter, because this happens all the time, then don't worry about them. Go start doing stuff that you can do to grow your business. Now, here's the other conversation. Hey, you can talk to your manager. Hey, manager, I've done all this stuff. I got it done. I actually talked to the rep. I just want to see, is there anything else that I can be learning? Right? And you can, again, it's a fine line of not overstepping, but just showing that you're hungry, that you're wanting to go above and beyond, because that's going to make a big difference. And again, this is always going to depend on where your territory is running at. But if you don't need your handheld, that's going to make a difference. Now, to my full line reps that they're like, Jake, I'm not an associate. I don't have a rep above me. Well, that's okay, but you have a manager above you. And the reason I'm saying that is when I was at Medtronic, I never was calling my manager, oh, please help me. Please, oh, what do I do? Please. No, I figured it out. I called other reps. I was able to go and just figure it out. And that's what I just told people is in the interview process, I was like, I don't need my handheld. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be resourceful. I'll get where I need to go. And that's the conversation I need you guys all to hear. No matter who you are or what position, you just need to be resourceful and figure it out. And so if you're a full line rep, if you're crushing your number, then what else can you do to start securing business for next year, right? Who else can you network with? What can you do to go provide more value to your accounts? What can you do to actually defend your accounts so they make it foolproof to where they'll never want to leave you? Can you go grow some other business? Can you go start having talks with people that maybe it's not going to close this year, but it's going to set you up for the next quarter? It's going to set you up for the next year to start strong. That's about going above and beyond. And here's the best part too is if there's a product that maybe not everybody's crushing, and let's say you hit quota for yours, or you're about to hit quota and you're in there, maybe you're going to go to that product that just nobody's selling or that's really undervalued. And then you can now put, this was the hardest place. This performed at a national level of 42% or 67%, but I was 112% of this quota, right? That's a big thing to say. It didn't matter where you were at. You were able to still perform when the national average or other people didn't perform. You were able to do that because, as we know, most of the time you're going to get different buckets as a full line sales rep role. And then you need to be able to figure out, how does that actually work? What are you going to be doing? And then that's where the big difference is can you do it without getting your hand held? Can you actually go crush it on your own? And so then where we're going to go above and beyond is, again, creating more relationships, talking to more people, converting business. Again, depending on where you're at in your territory, can you convert business? Can you defend business? And then the number one thing I always say is becoming an asset to your team, to your accounts, to the people you work with. Because again, if you can be an asset and people really love you and you show the value of who you are, they don't want to get rid of you. And guess what? That's going to make a big difference when you go into doing the leveraging for wherever you're trying to go next. This module is going to be very quick, but I had to put it in here because I had to speak about covering yourself, taking care of yourself. You already heard in other modules where I said the staff will try to blame you every chance they get. People will try to make it the rep's fault because guess what? The rep doesn't work there all the time. The rep's not actually hired by the hospital, right? And so the thing I'm just trying to show you guys is everything you do needs to be in writing. And even for just your career and working with your own team. And what I mean by that is when you guys are going to talk with somebody, you need to always put it back in an email. So for example, if I have a conversation with a doctor or with an OR nurse or somebody with it's going towards a deal or it's going towards a situation, you need to get it in writing because otherwise it's always going to be your word against their word. And so what I mean by that is, for example, if we talked about a deal that could be possibly going on in the next month or two, I would then follow up with an email and say, hey, Jen, it was great speaking with you today. I just wanted to touch base about our conversation where we spoke about you guys were looking for A, B, and C. You said the deadline would be here and just wanted to say I'm really looking forward to meeting with you. And then again, just save their email, whatever they would say back. But the reason I'm saying that is because the amount of times that you'll have somebody turn over who was a supply chain coordinator or an OR director or your lead for your division, they'll leave the OR and you had deals working and actually going on, then they're just gone and now it's starting over. If you can show the proof that you had those communications, that you were working on those deals, that they had been writing you back and saying that, that's going to go so far. Otherwise, they're going to just think you're trying to pull a fast one over them. So making sure, number one, that happens. Number two, if there's anything that happens inside the OR that is not okay, that could be a big deal, you need to make sure there's writing about it. And I can say this as much as even if it's just text messages, texting with a nurse or texting with somebody, there has to be documentation because otherwise, like I said, it's always going to be their word against your word. And so no matter what, you always just have to cover yourself. No matter if it's SPD and you're putting in your stuff and you're putting in your tray, you need to take a picture of it. You need to have that covered. But also when you're in the OR or you're working on deals, you need to have it all communicated, even with your managers, because I have had this so many times and it happens all the time in medical device sales where a manager, an OR director, somebody who's working on a deal tells you something and then 1, 2, 6 months later, they just forgot about it and they never said that and you're lying and you're making it up. And when you can go back and show them the email, the date and the time when they said that or when you guys had that conversation, that will save your life. And I'm just sitting here telling you guys as a rep who's done this and had to go through it and still goes through it. The best thing I've ever done is keep everything in an email, into a text message. You have to have it in written form because if it's always just your word against theirs, normally their words are going to win. So again, and unless you have witnesses, and again, usually as a rep, you're on your own island. And again, just talking about that even with teammates and even with managers, right? If your manager's your boss and they are quote unquote above you, you just need to get everything in writing. And I mean that in everything. If they tell you they're going to give you a promotion, if they tell you there's something happening in your territory, make sure they're writing you an email. Otherwise, you need to write an email stating what they just said to you and say you're really excited or whatever it is. Because again, if you can do that, you will cover yourself and you will save yourself so many headaches. You will save yourself so many problems. And that's why I had to make this module, because I need to make sure that you guys are self-protected and you guys are keeping yourself in an accountability where you're not going to put yourself in a bad situation. The power of social media. The reason I smile when I say that is you guys are all looking at me and girls are looking at me because of social media. You either found me on a podcast, on YouTube, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on whatever platform you found me on. But the reason I'm saying that is you didn't find me by meeting me in person normally. You found me by some kind of social media, showing you the value of social media. And for most of the time, it's going to be LinkedIn, right? That's where people are going to find us. And so the reason I'm telling you that is because if you use LinkedIn properly, people are going to know about you. They're going to think you are absolutely crushing it. And this is the craziest point. And I just had this talk with one of my buddies the other day. You could suck. You could not even be crushing it. But if you're posting certain things on social media, people could just think about you crushing it, right? So for example, let's use an easy one. We've all seen the person who's buy a jet or they're buy a Lamborghini or buy an expensive car they can't own. They don't own. And you know that. I know that, right? But they're doing a flex and some people are going to be like, wow, they're really crushing it because that's what they think. But the reality is, if you're being a resource and you're doing the good things, using LinkedIn can be a powerful, powerful source, and it can make you look and be known by people you would never know by, and they can be very impressed by you. And so the reason I'm saying that to you guys is, again, be backing it up. Don't just be posting stuff. But if you start posting your journey as an associate or you're a full line rep and they can see you with surgeons, they can see you with doctors, they can see you in cases, they can see you actually doing the job, and you make those posts and you make stuff that's very valuable, guess what? Regional managers will learn about that. Hiring managers will learn about that. People will see you. And if they see some associate crushing it, that's going to make a big difference. And they'll be like, man, we're looking for somebody. This person actually gets after it. Because what happens is you'll make one post and then somebody will see it. And then they follow you. And then over the next 6 to 8 months, you're going to continue to make posts every single month. And they're going to like that. And they're going to start creating an online relationship with you. And what I mean by that is not weird online relationship. It's going to be, oh, I know this person. And then you make it to feel like they know you. Are you talking into the camera? Are you just making posts that really make sense? Are you talking about your journey on what you're learning in this process? You need to be able to show that, because that's how you're going to get known, right? I always remember I heard a quote by Gary Vee, and he said, if you don't exist online, you don't exist in the social media world, right? And what that means is, if you didn't have an Instagram, a TikTok, a LinkedIn, the people want to quote unquote even know about you besides the people you currently know. And that is true, right? And so when we're in a small community where we're trying to learn about medical device sales and you're trying to go somewhere, they need to know about you. And LinkedIn is that #1 source. The thing I have to put a disclaimer on though, not every company is okay with it. Not every company is going to be okay with stuff you post. That's why you have to be very careful and very smart with what you do. For example, if you're an associate and you're posting on LinkedIn or you're posting on social media all the time, but you're not doing your job very well, or it's in the first 2 or 3 months, they're going to start telling you, knock it off. They're going to question what you're doing. Because if you can't run the trades, or you're messing up and you don't even know the products you're selling, but you're taking time to post on LinkedIn, it's not going to be a good look. Same thing with a full line sales rep role. That's why I always tell people, I had my stuff, but it wasn't until I joined with Innovis that they knew about me actually doing this stuff. When I was at Medtronic, I had this, but I didn't really post about a lot of the stuff I was doing until I started crushing my numbers. But even then, I never talked about all the other stuff I was doing. I just would show the product that I'm selling, or I would talk about some experiences that I personally was going through that had nothing to do with the company or anything or what I learned, right? And so what I'm just saying that is, you need to learn to use social media, because it's going to be one of the most powerful tools, and it's how you can be able to leverage your career very quickly. Because if a hiring manager or other reps see you 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and you're posting and they're like, man, I really like this person, that can lead to opportunities in the future. They can message you, hey, what about this? And even more important, it can lead to recruiters seeing you. And recruiters are trying to place people at other jobs. Oh, hey, I saw your post. Let me see. I'm sitting here telling you guys from experience. Social media has helped change my life. Social media can help change your life as well. And if you do it the correct way, you will be able to have a lot of success if you're doing the right things in the right appropriate manner. But again, I always have to say, it's going to depend on your company and where you're at. And the last thing I'll say on that is, I knew I couldn't post very much stuff when I had the lowest performing territory. I just had to work. But once I was finishing at over 100%, once I was being in the top 10, guess who had the power? Because guess what they can't say? Jake, you need to get this done. Oh, your stuff's not performing. Now it is. It is performing. So guess what? If I want to take 15 minutes out of my day to actually make a post, I can. But here's the also conversation. Am I making that post before work hours, quote unquote 7 or 8? Am I making it after work hours, 6 or 7 p.m., right? If I do it during the day, is it during the lunchtime? So I can say I was in between breaks, right? You just have to be able to know, but understand that social media has such a giant power to it, and it will help change your life. And especially in medical device sales, whether you're trying to get a new job or you're trying to get a promotion or wherever you're going, LinkedIn is going to be that tool. This portion I wanted to make because I wanted to talk about what I did to take the lowest performing territory in the nation to the top 10. I've done a couple presentations on this. I had people ask me, hey, Jake, can you come speak? And so I wanted to bring the value to you guys because, again, no matter if you're an associate or if you're a full line rep, this is going to be valuable to you no matter what, because you'll be able to use the things that I'm going to teach and expand on, and you're going to be able to use it wherever you're at or in the future where you're going. So when we talk about turning a territory around, the thing I always want to talk to you guys about, again, is just saying this is from my experience, and this was where I was at. I took over the lowest performing territory, that I was the only rep in the territory. I was outnumbered 1 to 15, and we were able to still crush it and get where we wanted to go. But it took a lot of work. It took a lot of hustle, and it took being very strategic and being smart. And so that's what I want to talk to you guys again about. But again, I just want to always mention that this is from my experience, because I'm saying my territory is not going to be your territory. It could be something totally different. You might be walking into a totally different outcome. And the reason I can say that is I'm here on the West Coast. One of my first accounts I walked in, they're like, why the hell are you here? We don't want you here. We want to use your competitor. We like them better. And then the whole case, they just trashed my product, talked about how bad it sucked. I can say that because I'm from the Midwest. I know it could happen some places in the Midwest, but like majority of the time, the people were a lot nicer. I talk to my reps that are in the Midwest. I tell them what happened. They're like, that would never happen here. Are you serious? I've talked to surgeons. I've talked to nurses about it. They're like, no way. So just understand, this was my experience. It's going to be different for everybody. But I just want to give some tips that I did. So number one, meet all current customers. And we talked about this in the course, but the thing I just got to talk about is when I did this, I never once tried to sell them the first time I met them. I never tried to sell them the first 3 months I met them. I never tried to sell them even 6 months, and I was just trying to get to know them. I was just trying to find out what they liked, what they didn't like, what I could do to improve their last experience, what I could do to earn their trust. Number two on that, I have talked to everybody. When I tell you guys, there was one time when I first started, I remember it was the first 3 months, I was at one of my hospitals at 9:30 in the evening. And I went and hung out and talked to the people in the SPD room. And I just made relationships. And guess what happened? They were my biggest resource when I needed to get stuff turned over, and I could shoot them a text because I spent the hour to just hang out with them on a Thursday night when they were working, right? It's just being able to put in that time in, or I was already at the hospital, so I just made sure to go talk who I was there, why I was already all the way, and did all this effort to make sure that I could get the most out of it compared to just go and do my job, get out. And that's what most people do, and that's why I get so passionate about it. Those are why they don't succeed. They're just in, punch the time clock, get out. What about if you actually just go and just try to learn as much as you can and just want to get to know people? It'll make a big difference in your territory. Number three is learn what that last rep did well and not so well from everybody, right? Hey, can you give me some advice what you didn't like about the last rep? Because guess what? The nurses are going to say things. The scrub techs are going to say things. The surgeon is going to say things. And so is the OR director. So you just need to learn, what could you do better, and what did they do great that you should replicate, and what did they do that wasn't so great and that you could make better? And then lastly, you need to be able to show that you're there to be an asset and not to make money. Because the last thing you can ever do is just come in and be Hey, yeah, you should use this because of this. Oh, bam. And they just become the used car salesman. And I say this all the time. The reason why people hate used car salesmen is because they lie to you just to get a deal done. They don't actually care about you, and they're not telling you the truth, and they're not giving you what you need. They're being selfish, and they know they make a commission, but they're not giving you what you actually need, and they're not giving you a good product for that. That's what we need to make sure every time I'm in the OR room. The amount of times I talk to people where I'm like, I'm going to have a conversation with this surgeon today, and we're going to talk about this. And then the case does not go well. They're in a pissed off mood, or they walked in and they're like, gosh, dang it. Or no, guess what's not happening that day? That conversation. I need to read the room and be like, hey, doc, I hope it gets better next time. I'm so sorry about this. And then, hey, I'll see you next case, right? Be able to have those conversations. Maybe I need to go talk to him after 10 minutes and just be able to figure out where the frustration was, what was going wrong, because you don't want that case to be your last case, right? And so you just need to be able to have those conversations. Again, the only time you should suggest a product that could be quote unquote an upsell is if it's going to actually work. If it's actually going to help the surgeon or help the patient or help the OR staff. It should never be just like you're trying to make another buck, because I can sit here and tell you from experience, they know that. They can feel that, and that's what will make you lose business faster than anything else. Now, once you've met with all your customers, you need to keep your word. It is astounding how many people say they're going to be at a case, say they're going to email prices, say that they're going to do this, and they never do. It is the most common complaint I got from my OR directors and the staff, that they said, oh, this rep will say they'll be there, and then they're not there. And then the staff is there to fend for themselves, and they don't know what they're doing because the rep said that they're going to be there and help coach them. And so that's my biggest thing. No matter what you're going to do, you got to keep your word. You're going to say, I promise I'll keep my word. And you got to over communicate, and you got to be honest when you mess up. And the real quick story about that is, one time I was very stressed. I had a couple big jobs going on at the same time, a couple big surgeries. My top account was running. I was at another, this was my second largest account, but they kept turning over staff. I couldn't miss it because I was with my top surgeon. So I went there early, got them all set up, found out the people that always are in my room. Now they switched it with all brand new people who were freaking out. Literally walked in. The nurse was all like sporadic and freaking out. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then I went to my regular nurse that I saw, and I made the comment. I was like, she's freaking out. She doesn't know what the bleep she's doing. The comment I said was to the nurse that I had a friendship with, but unfortunately, the nurse that was in my room was right behind me and heard every word. That sucked. I knew I messed up in that moment, and it did not make her feel good, because she's like, well, what the, and then she left. And now she had to go do my case that I could no longer stay at. And for me, that was a real learning lesson of, don't matter where you're at in the conversation, you need to know who's around you. And also, you shouldn't say words that are gonna put you in that situation. But because of that, I want you guys to know, I owned up to that. I emailed the OR director and I told them I had a screw up. I made one of their nurses, I said something that they heard and it shouldn't have been ever said. And I wanted to apologize, and I'd like to set up a meeting to apologize. They were like, they got me in with the OR director. They got me in with the supply chain. They just had to close the deal. And I was like, oh my God, that was on a Thursday. And I was like, here we are. I have to meet with them on a Monday morning. I thought I lost the deal. I thought they were going to rip me out and kick me out of the hospital. I ended up going in. I found that nurse. I apologized to her personally. She's like, hey, no, I totally get it. And I was like, I was so stressed. But again, there's no excuse, and I'm ashamed to make you feel that way. Had that conversation. I went in. I told them what had happened, and they said, we are so thankful that you brought this to our attention and that you owned up to it. And hey, we all have bad days, Jake. It's all right. We just ask that you can go make it right. And I let them know, yeah, I already did, just so you know. And they're like, that's great. So we wanted to talk to you because we want $30,000 more worth of product. And the reason I say that is because in that comment right before they told me they wanted to buy more, they said, your character to us has never been in question. We all have bad days, but you have proven that you keep showing up and you keep doing it. So what I mean by that, guys, is when you mess up, it's going to happen. You just got to own it. And does it suck? Heck yeah. And guess what? There's times I've messed up and I got screamed at. I got yelled at, and it sucked. But I knew it's the right thing to do, because otherwise you're now that person who doesn't take ownership. So when I say keep your word, it doesn't mean it's always easy, but it's what you need to do. Do the right thing, right? And that's what I can just tell you guys, never lie, because you will get caught in that lie at some point. And you can't ever lose the trust of the people that are the most important in that industry, right? If you're at a hospital and you now lie to them and you lose their trust, your business is done. They're going to use the other people because now they can never trust you again. And so I wanted to just say it goes back to that story I just mentioned. You always got to do the right thing, even when you mess up, even when it sucks, even when it's not fun. You always got to do the right thing, especially when you know it down in your core. Hey, that wasn't great, and I was in a bad part. I deserve the consequences. I deserve when I get yelled at because I messed up, right? And so just understand, always keep your word and do that right thing. Then I had to learn fast is not everyone is a customer, which we talked about. And going into that conversation of not every prospect is really a potential sale. You need to be able to get to that no as fast as possible. And if they're like, nope, I'm not interested, great. That's actually exciting because you now know not to spend another second with them and waste your energy on somebody who is never going to buy, who is just going to screw around with you and waste your time. So not just understand not everyone is a customer. And like we mentioned earlier, spend your time where it actually matters. Where's the accounts that actually could be worth 100,000 or 200,000 or a big percent of your business, but are actually open to buying your stuff or actually have people that are interested in your stuff compared to you might have two accounts that are both worth $200,000, but you have some people that are like, yeah, we're kind of open to change. We're open to seeing it. You might have other people like, no, we have a 3-year contract with these people. You need to understand what are the contracts. You need to learn what's going on. And is there even a possibility? Because that doesn't mean you're not going to ever talk to that person who has a 3-year contract, but you're going to spend a lot less time with that person who has a 3-year contract and they're not going to change than you would be the person who is actually open to using it and could make an adjustment right away. And so you just need to be able to understand what's going on in that business and who's going to be worth talking to. Then we talked about this all the time is creating the urgency. You need to be able to go and have those conversations of, hey, what's going on here? Oh, this is going on. And you need to be able to find the decision makers and show that there is a problem and show that there needs to be some change. Then going into that creating urgency, it always comes back to making sure you're talking to the right people and then making sure you're bringing in the decision makers, because again, you can be talking all day. It doesn't matter. But the one thing I want to make a quick point on that is sometimes you're going to need the doctors do the heavy lifting we talked about, but you need to know when to bring them in. Because, for example, I know people who have brought them in and they brought them to the OR director, but guess what? They didn't know that the OR director is not the actual person who makes the decision. It was the CFO or somebody else. And so then they just had their surgeon, who was their one shot in their one back pocket, come in and chew out the OR director or say that they need them. And now your doctor's mad because they're like, great, but I'm not the person. You should have said it to A, B, and C. And now you just got the OR director mad at you. And now the surgeon has to go try to talk to somebody else again. And now it's wasting their time because their time's valuable. So again, when you are going to bring in those heavy hitters, you need to make sure that it's all lined up. And the person they're going to go talk to is the person they need to know to make the decision. Then from there, closing deals. People care who they're buying from. Going back to, you need to be a nice person, be an expert at what you do, keep your word, but make sure that you're a good person, that you're showing value, that you're going to be able to make those relationships, and you're not there just to make a dollar. You're good there to actually provide a resource and provide value to their organization, to their surgeries, to their staff. You need to use that urgency and be kind to win, right? You can be aggressive, but there's a way to do it to not become a jerk, because otherwise you'll be known as the jerk who's the medical device sales rep, which is a very common thing to be known as in the industry. And we're trying not to be that person. And I'm going to sit here and tell you, I have been that person and it feels horrible, right? We need to continue to try to always be better and be the nicest person. Like I've made some videos about this. Be the golden retriever, wiggling your butt, smiling all the time. And guess what? They're going to yell at you. And sometimes it sucks. But guess what? That golden retriever's still happy to see you and still just shaking their butt because they're just happy to be there, right? So always be that person. And lastly, for closing those deals, you always just got to make sure you're following through, because if you don't follow through, it's not going to happen. And then the most important, work harder. And I know what you guys are thinking, oh, I already work hard. No, work harder. Because what I can sit here and tell you, most people are lazy. That's why people who are lazy will never win. It's why they're always making an excuse. It's why the scrub tech got in the way. It's why the nurse, oh, it doesn't work. Sometimes I had to work way harder because I had to go around these roadblocks and go 16 different ways to find the actual decision or get around this problem. And I had to do it, and it took a lot more time than if I would have just been able to go through that roadblock, but that roadblock wasn't moving. So I had to find a detour around it. You guys are going to have to work harder sometimes. You're going to have to stay up later. You're going to have to get up earlier. You're going to have to know your stuff better than the competitor. You're going to have to just be a better resource. You're going to have to know the other people that you're working with, the other reps. You're going to need to know the other products that your surgeons use on a regular basis. That's how you become an asset. That's how you're going to turn stuff around, because again, it goes that you're better than just making a sale. You're there to be a resource. Most people try to work smarter, not harder. But what I get the most passionate about is, what if you worked harder and smarter? What if you did it both? Because then you just crush it at life. Then you crush it in medical device sales. And that is my motto to my life, is I'm not going to sit here and just try to take it easy. No, I'm going to still come in with the mindset that I'm here to win. I'm going to come in at 1,000%, but also I'm going to be very strategic and be smart on what I'm doing. I'm not going to just be running into a wall. I'm going to make sure that it matters what I'm doing and give it all my effort that I have. And this is the last thing I want to leave you guys with. You will be the reason that you are successful. Not your manager, not your territory, not your teammates, not your company, not the back orders. You. You will be the reason that you'll be standing as a full line rep one day, that you'll be a manager one day, that you'll be a top performing rep one day, because of the action and the ownership that you take. No one else.
If you've made it to the end of this video, you're already in the top 1% to 2% of people who actually are looking to learn how to break into medical device sales. That tells me a lot about who you are. And if you're not wanting to leave it up to guess, or just trying to take information and figure it out on your own, but you actually want guidance throughout this process, feel free to click the link below where our team can schedule a call. And if we feel like it's a good fit, we can help you through that whole entire process. We can help you with mock interviews, mock role plays. We can have you have coaching so you're not just guessing who to reach out to or what to say. We can help you develop your why. We can go into all of the steps and even the things you don't know you need that are going to help you break in, such as our members like Ryan, who was 23 years old and he broke in at over $115,000. Or, for example, Kyle, who was a nurse and we broke him in at over $175,000. We've been able to do this time and time again because we have a proven system with proven coaches that have been successful in the industry who can also teach it. So if you want to learn more, click the link below, and we're excited to see about the next steps.